Hello, everyone. Ibu Ramali, can you hear
Halo,
me?
Resya.
Halo, Bu. Sorry for
Kabar.
a bit late.
Kenapa ya itu aku itu ya? Balik ke yang itu, Oh. Ada di satu-satu yang dilihat dari Re, kita putar dulu video ya, Re, ya. Pas jam 13 langsung mulai ya, Re, ya.
Oke, Bu.
Today, more than half the world's population live in cities, and by 2050, more than 70% of us will. Cities are drivers of prosperity, generating over 80% of global economic activity. Today, more than half the world's population live in cities, of global and by 2050, emissions, more than 70% of facing the impacts of climate change from drivers weather of prosperity and other generating over 80% like desertification and sea level rises. More than half the world's population live in cities, of global by 2050, more than 70% of facing the Today, more than half the world's population live in cities, and by 2050, more than 70% of us will. Cities are drivers of prosperity, generating over 80% of global economic activity. But cities also produce 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and they are increasingly facing the impacts of climate change from extreme weather events and other slower moving stresses like desertification and sea level rises. This exposure to climate impacts is in part due to rapid urbanization that, in the absence of adequate planning and appropriate infrastructure investment, leads to sprawl, building in exposed areas, and overstretched public services. So it is critical that we make our cities greener, more resilient, and more inclusive in a changing climate. Cities in higher income countries account for 86% of global urban CO2 emissions, while cities in low income countries that produce less than 1% of emissions are most severely impacted by climate change-related shocks and stresses. A new World Bank report uses data from across 10,000 cities globally to understand how climate change is impacting cities and the people who live in them. It provides a compass for policymakers on what can be done to create thriving, greener, more resilient, and more inclusive cities. Local and national governments need to work together with the communities they serve to make effective use of 5 broad sets of policy instruments: information, incentives, insurance, integration, and investments, the 5 I's. Accurate information to help governments, individuals, and businesses make better decisions. Incentives to motivate people and businesses to take action. Insurance to minimize the financial impact of disasters. Integration to minimize unnecessary sprawl and bring people closer to jobs and opportunities. Investments to help anticipate, prevent, and respond to shocks. The World Bank Group works with partners and clients to help cities not only survive but also thrive in the face of climate change. Together, we can build thriving, greener, more resilient, and more inclusive cities.
Population growth and rapid urbanization are driving the increase in disaster risks. The world is becoming increasingly urban. It's that more than 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities by 2050. And as this process continues, the urbanized land area is expected to triple. Cities concentrate economic activity and generate prosperity, but they also concentrate risks. Almost 75% of post-disaster losses are attributable to extreme weather events. Climate change threatens to push an additional 100 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. And we estimate that within the same time frame, without significant investment into making cities more resilient, natural disasters may cost cities worldwide $314 billion each year. The time to act is now. Cities are adaptive systems and can promote resilient growth in an inclusive manner if institutions and policies are well coordinated and if financing is available. Mainstreaming resilience into urban development planning can reverse the current trend of rising disaster impacts. If cities act decisively, they can save lives and assets. However, many local governments lack the tools, expertise, financing, and instruments to factor the potential impacts of disasters into their investment decisions. GFDRR is leading the way to enhance urban resilience by supporting cities to strengthen their ability to better manage ongoing stresses, to prepare for, withstand, and recover from acute shocks. GFDRR is a major supporter of urban resilience globally through the provision and funding of technical assistance, research and analytics, knowledge management, and partnership building. Since 2010, GFDRR has funded almost $200 million in grant resources, which is almost a quarter of our total portfolio, leveraging over $12.7 billion in lending. We have also supported over 100 cities in 88 countries to build their social, economic, physical, and environmental resilience to natural hazards and climate change. Demand for innovative approaches to urban resilience has been increasing over time, especially during COVID-19 when cities have been dealing with compounding risks in the face of uncertainty.
It is for this reason that GFTRR supports a range of programs and activities to help cities enhance their resilience to shocks. For example, the City Resilience Program, launched in 2017, is a multi-donor initiative aimed at increasing financing for urban resilience. By the end of fiscal year 2020, CRP provided support to over 100 cities.
Okay, Ibu Ramalis, can we start now or?
Yeah. Let's start. We already here. Everyone. Hello.
Yeah, Ibu. Okay.
Hello,
Hi everyone.
everybody.
Hi everyone.
Hello. The keynote speakers are already here, Ibu.
Yeah, everyone is here.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of you speakers, moderators, participants. Committee, welcome to our international webinar on climate change and urban resilience, connecting the global network of thoughts. We are delighted to have you join us from across the globe for this important discussion. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's a present reality impacting our cities in profound ways. This webinar aims to explore the critical intersection of climate change and urban resilience, focusing on disaster safety, economic stability, community initiatives, and the vital role of research, regulation, and governance. We will also delve into the importance of protecting our ecosystems and ensuring equitable knowledge sharing. Today, we have a rich program lined up for you today, featuring 2 insightful keynote speakers and 2 engaging panel discussions with inspiring speakers and discussions. Our goal is not only to explore the challenges, but also to foster collaboration and pave the way for a more resilient future. This important event is brought to you by a collaborative partnership dedicated to addressing the complex challenges of climate change. We are proud to acknowledge the support of our esteemed organizers and sponsors, Pilar Tunas Nusa Lestari Foundation, the West Java Environmental Board, Restore, FOA Flux Switzerland, Bandung Institute of Technology, and Gebze Technical University, Turkey. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, to set the stage for our discussion later, we are honored to welcome our first keynote speaker, Pak Sibarani Sofyan, the founder and director of Urban Plus. Pak Sibarani is already here. Pak Sibarani has over a decade of experience in Southeast Asia, notably Indonesia, executing impactful planning projects that become new places for people to live, work, and play. He is known for his award-winning design of Indonesia's new national capital, IKN Negara Rimba Nusa, integrating forest city concepts. Pak Sibarani, the time and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, clearly, Pak.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, the distinguished speakers and also colleagues. Ibu Ramalis, thank you for inviting me for this. And can I have the admin to allow me to screen share?
Can you speak louder, Pak Sip?
Okay, I try because I think I'm losing my mic. Hang on, yeah. Let me go to my microphone. Okay. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And I'm glad that I can be here to speak together with you. And I'm going to use this limited time. I understand that we only have 10 minutes to share with you probably the kind of perspective that we need for our future, facing our adversity that coming from a designer perspective. And as you probably aware, we are working on the capital city of Indonesia, but I'm not going to talk about the capital city now. I'm still going to talk about the capital city of Jakarta, which is still now as a capital city of Indonesia. And I think this is where we have issues and situation that we are facing, where the cities is already in the dire situation, where the population is already exceeding the capacity of our environment. And I use a lot of the slides coming from the 100 Resilient Cities, which I know that is no longer continuing, but I think I have a lot of our experience in resiliency coming from these networks, which I'm going to use a lot. And I think we did a couple of the scheme in several Indonesian cities back in the early days, probably about 10 years ago. And we understand several cities like Jakarta, Semarang is already having some kind of network of that, but then we'll try to discuss it about how we kind of see the resiliency is coming. And Jakarta, as a typical metropolitan and anywhere else in the world, and also in many cities in Indonesia, facing this typical situation of traffic, flooding, land subsidence, especially. Not every city has this kind of situation, but we do have this situation, and it is already coming into a very high attention, and also really giving a lot of adversity that also impacting a lot of population, especially people in the North Jakarta. And the sea level rise and the scenario of if we go over certain level of increment of level of water, sea level water, then the impact to Jakarta is really tremendous. So Jakarta facing a lot of this, not only coming from the north, from the coastal line, it's also coming from inland, coming from the upper stream, and also the air pollution is also choking the city. So Jakarta is like really the culmination of all kind of problems: social problem, access to public needs, access to clean water, access to drainage, access to affordable housing, access to open spaces. And then we understand, I think in the introduction, that not only just the shocks, something like a flood or earthquakes happening, but also the stress, meaning things that are accumulating over the time, and it can erupt at any given time. So, and it's not only the physical, but it's also can touch on the social, economic, and including the physical decline. So I think I'm not going to talk too long on this, but I'm pretty sure we all understand that the city is facing not only just the shocks, which is something that can come in very swift, but then damaging, but then it also have this, so what we call the chronic stresses, things that is boiling over the time. And it is also part and parcel of the issues that we are facing, especially in Indonesia, in Jakarta. Lack of affordable housing, social inequality, access to healthcare, access to equal sort of like access to many facilities, especially economic opportunities. So this could lead into something that can really erupt. And if we can deal with this, then we will have the city that will be in decline, and it will probably going down in the path of the civilization. So I think this will be a wake-up call for us to jump and then get out of it, because once we have the shock, it will be reminding us that we have to start doing doing things differently, and we need to set another path of development that is getting out of these issues, because we got this kind of reminder to us. And then urban resiliency is also the capacity not only certain individuals, but it also part of the community engagement, institution, business, and system that is all encompassing, and it's all not only just few top-down approaches, it's also bottoms up and also on your peers, that you have to be able to survive, adapt, and grow in whatever situation, either the chronic stresses and the acute shocks. But then within the framework of the 100 city, 100 RC, there are this different squadron. I'm pretty sure there are many similar kind of framework like this, but I do kind of tend to agree that apart from the leadership and the strategy needed, the health and the well-being of the people, the social and economic aspect of that, infrastructure and environment are four different sides that needs to be integrated, needs to be think in similar sort of level. A lot of us in the professional, we go to the fourth quadrant, which is the infrastructure environment, because that tend to be things that is fixable, that tends to be actionable. But in all these four quadrants, we need to pay attention to. And I think there are many capacities, and there are many within the framework, many aspects that we have to be able to respond. And I'm pretty sure today will be a good time for us to discuss about this. And I believe collaboration is important. Community initiative is something that we have to strive to beyond just engagement. A lot of time we only stop at just engaging and talking in terms of FGD or some sort of like community meeting, but then it needs to go beyond that. We need to really bring not only just discussion, but also actionable items. And where we are, because I'm speaking more on the planners, architects, and designers as a profession. I'm trying to also looking into the sort of like this two different area where the people, the community, the businesses, the NGOs are part of the sort of the community and the people representative. We do have agencies, operators, authorities, city government that is also part of another box of stakeholders that also become the leadership from the cities and also from the government. And we planners and designers and architects, we try to become the bridge. We communicate through our use of technology. We capitalize what the technology can offer us, but we also have to be the guardian of the environment, the side of this world that doesn't really speak for itself. But then we are the one that we have the technocratic background to know what the environment needs to be and the needed of that. So we have to balance between the society, the government, the stakeholders, the technology that enable us, and also the environment that we need to nurture and we need to protect. So I think that's where we are. And we do have several case studies, which I'm going to go through very quick. City of Boston is something that probably kind of come into the mind when I start to see how Jakarta is facing sea level rise and also the flooding and also the subsidence. Yeah. So at least for us, the city designers and planners, we need to realize the potential danger, the potential issues. We start to analyze using data, using technology, using all this predictive sort of tools. But then we start to build the way how to mitigate or how to embrace at some point the area that needs to be taken care of. So instead of trying to prevent everything, Boston decided to, especially the old town of Boston, decided to embrace it by identifying the area that can be affected by flood and also sea level rise, and start to act accordingly by creating a sort of like a network, a framework of how the building needs to cope up with the incoming of the flood or the sea level rise. So they start to move things around. They move the ground level to the top. They also change the building system. They also treat the building envelope to add this kind of resiliency towards the flood. And also they start to liberate the ground floor. They also move certain area in the basement and then add certain things on the top. So I think this is something that I think us as a physical designer, we can do something about. And I think there are numerous guidelines that we can start to explore and think about and work together to embrace this kind of situation. But there is also another possibility of thinking out loud, even further looking into the extremes. And I'm borrowing the work of Bindi Raditya Purnama, looking into the scenario, almost kind of a bleak scenario of letting it flood, allowing Jakarta to just kind of like embrace it and really think beyond the norm of protecting it or defending it, but then allowing the water to penetrate and to imagine how the life like when this flood is coming, and let the water flow, let the water in, and let's live among the water. Let's embrace that and accept that and work with that. Will we leave the city? Maybe not, maybe yes, but then work with whatever that is left and live among the waters. That's also another kind of thinking that I think some of the students already start to think about. I think we probably in this discussion we can embrace and all these different options and different sort of ideas. I'm coming more from the design and also from the physical point of view, but I think uh, a lot of the audience here can really discuss about many other aspects. But as a closure, I will think about the need of political awareness, a reason to act. I think we need to do something. We need to act on something, and also we need the knowledge of what to do. So these three elements that I would probably close my thought, my speech about how we can work together towards being more resilient city in the future. And just to close it, I think Bu Ramalis and us back in 2018 talking about ACT, I think we have this kind of sort of like community activism. We are a bunch of designers, we are a bunch of planners, but I think what we did, we really tried to introduce the knowledge of water sensitive urban design, and we try to do wet rain garden in the kampung in Surabaya. We engage with the society, we engage with the people. We bring together the bapa, the fathers, and also the mothers and the kids, bringing also certain knowledge about productive landscape, and also try to repeat this in the community. So with that, I close this introduction, and I hope this will be useful and beneficial. And I wish everyone the best for today's discussion. I hope it become fruitful and beneficial for everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hand it over back to the moderator.
Thank you, Pak Sibarani, for that compelling address and great share of how climate change can impact our cities. Pak Sibarani has 4 dimensions and 12 capacities of city resilience to respond to the issues. And one of those is the actionable items and stakeholders collaboration. We truly appreciate your insights, Pak Sibarani, and we'll discuss the issue on the discussion panel later. Thank you, Pak Sibarani. Next, we are privileged to have Mrs. Denise Yaman Galantini to deliver our second keynote address. Mrs. Denise is an assistant professor in the Urban and Regional Planning Department at Gebze Technical University, Turkey, where her research focuses on primarily on resilience in urban and regional planning. Okay, Mrs. Denise, we eagerly wait for your perspectives.
Yes, thank you for introducing. I want to share my screen. Okay, I think we
Can you
see
speak
it.
up a little bit, Dennis?
Yes, now better?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, today we gather to address a really critical theme that shapes our cities today and impacts millions of lives. In the modern times, there are many complexities such as social inequality, rapid urbanization, and most prominently, climate change, which is also the key focus of this webinar. So resilience has become a guiding principle in urban planning to fight with these challenges. To understand why it is so important, let's first take a look at a short video.
Have continuously evolved.
As well as global challenges like climate change, As global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and inequality rise, we must rethink how we plan and build our cities. Resilience provides a platform for managing those challenges. And we have discussed the definition of urban resilience many times. We know that it is defined as the capacity of our cities to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from a variety of disturbances, whether they be natural disasters, economic shocks, or social upheavals. But resilience is not merely about bouncing back to what was before. It is about bouncing forward, transforming challenges into opportunities for growth and improvement. Across the globe, we see the consequences of failing to set up resilience. Communities unprepared for extreme weather events suffer not only infrastructure damage, but also significant economic and social fallout. These effects are often most severe for the vulnerable, deepening existing inequalities. Therefore, integrating resilience into urban planning is not just a technical challenge, it is a moral and social imperative. The future of cities depends on our ability to learn from past, innovate for the present, and prepare for tomorrow's uncertainties. In this century, building resilient cities is crucial to assuring we are ready for what comes next. So, how can we achieve urban resilience? Essentially, we need to discuss the answers to this question. Sustainability and resilience are now essential components of modern urban planning. Since 1970s, sustainability-based planning has been striving toward the ideal city, and new definitions of urban sustainability have emerged in the 2000s. At the heart of these discussions is the need for cities to live in harmony with nature. With limited resources such as water, energy, and food, they are becoming scarcer in the 21st century. The transition towards sustainability has become central in fields that study the interaction of complex systems. This context raises other significant questions. How can we develop governance response capacity to manage these complexities? Are natural disasters truly unexpected if humanity continues to try to dominate nature? This is where resilience-based planning becomes critical, since it focuses on readiness for the unexpected and building systems that can endure and adapt. When discussing the integration of resilience into urban planning, our message must be clear. Resilience is not optional. It is a necessity in this century. An urban planning that effectively incorporates resilience focuses on sustainable infrastructure, equitable resource access, and community engagement. Cities should turn vulnerabilities into opportunities for innovation. For instance, by investing in green spaces and adaptive infrastructure, they not only protect themselves but also enhance the quality of life for their residents. Integrating green infrastructure such as parks, wetlands, and green corridors into urban design improves both ecological resilience and overall livability of the city. These examples remind us that resilience planning is not just about risk management, it is about creating cities where people can thrive. Moreover, resilience in urban planning cannot happen in isolation because, as I said before, it is not merely a technical challenge, it's a social one. It requires the active participation of communities. Engaging citizens in the planning process is essential for assuring that diverse perspectives are considered, particularly those of marginalized and vulnerable groups. When communities are involved, they feel a sense of ownership and empowerment, enabling them to respond more effectively to crises. This participatory approach builds social cohesion. At this point, education is a key to fostering the next generation of urban planners equipped to handle these complexities. Resilience should not be an afterthought in our curricula. It should be a fundamental principle of training for future planners. Our educational frameworks must evolve to place resilience at their center, incorporating principles of sustainability, social justice, and adaptive strategies, as well as interdisciplinary collaboration into teaching. It is essential to define the key themes of resilience and make them integral to the education of urban planners. So, we should focus on several critical issues in urban planning education, such as rapid urbanization, because cities are growing faster than ever, but this rapid urbanization and environmental degradation are putting pressure on natural ecosystems and the quality of urban life. Health and food security, also strong governance, effective collaboration between policymakers, communities, and experts is essential for driving effective urban planning solutions. Disaster preparedness, again, community initiatives, good governance practices, promoting biodiversity, and knowledge distribution. To achieve true resilience, we must set up equitable production and distribution of knowledge, providing that every community has access to the information they need to adapt and thrive. Technology as well plays a crucial role in urban planning education. The integration of smart city technologies such as real-time data monitoring and predictive analytics can also vastly improve our ability to respond to emergencies. To conclude, urban resilience is not a destination. Urban resilience is not merely a concept, but it is a necessity. It is an ongoing journey. It's a collective responsibility that calls upon planners, educators, and communities to innovate and adapt. By integrating resilience into our urban planning practices and education, we empower our cities to not only withstand adversity, but to flourish amidst it. We, as academicians, policymakers, volunteers, we all have to work together to build not just resilient cities, but resilient futures for all. Thank you. Teşekkürler. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Ibu Denis. Resilience is the primary tools for urban planning. Resilience planning is not just about risk management, it's about creating cities where people can thrive. Thank you for your insight, Ibu Denis. We eagerly wait for your discussion later. Okay, now we will move into our first panel discussion titled Mapping the Issue. This panel will explore the multifaceted challenges posed by climate change to urban environments. The themes for this panel include environment degradation and urbanization, health, food security and green ecosystems, governance and collaboration, and disaster safety and economic resilience of the city. We will have 4 panelists and discussants for each panel, and the moderator will introduce them to you all. This first panel will be moderated by Pak Reza Prima from Tunas Nusa Foundation. He is an urban designer with experience in architecture, urban design and planning, specialized in urban settlements, social development planning, and the sustainability aspects of urban development, particularly in the areas of spatial and environmental justice. I now hand over the moderation to Pak Reza Prima. Pak Reza, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Reza. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I will be your moderator for this session. In this first panel, just like Mbak Reza has already said before, we will discuss 4 topics, namely, the first is environmental degradation and urbanization. The second is health, food security and green ecosystem. The third is governance and collaboration. And the fourth is disaster, safety, and economic resilience of a city. This 4 subject is important and interrelated in the context of climate change mitigation and adaptation, and also to enhance our urban resilience. Our goal today is to explore the issue on climate change and urban resilience, share insights, and engage in a meaningful dialogue. So we hope we will leave this session with a better understanding of problems and potential action in relation to climate change and city resilience. I am delighted to introduce our esteemed panelists. The first panelist is Yuti Aryani, PhD, former postdoctoral research associate at University of Cambridge. Dr. Yuti is an independent scholar with research interest in sustainability and climate change. And the second is we have Ibu Ramali Sobandi, PhD, founder of Tunas Nusa Foundation. She worked as a public official from 1983 to 2012, focusing on housing, settlement, and urban development at the Ministry of Public Works. And the next panelist, we have Ibu Rita Padawangi, PhD. Ibu Rita is Associate Professor at the College of Interdisciplinary and Experiential Learning in Singapore University of Social Science. Her research interests are social movement, environmental justice, and participatory urban development. And last but not least, panelist of this panel is Emin Yahya Mentesi, PhD, co-founder and co-director of Anova Engineering, Planning and GIS, startup company based in Turkey. Dr. Emin works on different aspects of disaster risk reduction and urban resilience with an interdisciplinary perspective. And we will also have 2 additional experts as our panel discussions. The first panelist is Alfa Suraya, Vice President of Planning at Pata Jasa Company in Jakarta. And the second is Mr. Ronnie Smets from Luca School of Arts Belgium. And he also related as a teacher in documentary photography at St. Lucas Brussels University College of Art and Design. His focus mainly on capturing consequences of the subject matter like transformation in the landscape due to ecological, political, or other conflict facts in a balanced and non-direct documentary way. Okay, that's all our panelists and discussion. To kick things off, I would like to provide a brief overview of our discussion format. So we will start with some opening remarks from each panelist, with 3 minutes time for each panelist, and followed by response from our 2 discussants and the moderated discussion. And towards the end, we will have closing notes from discussants and panelists. So let's begin with our first panelist, Yuti Aryani. Mbak Yuti, could you please share your initial thoughts on environmental degradation and its relation with urbanization? So the floor is yours, Mbak Yuti.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I have like a problem to share my screen, so I'm just going to kind of like go through the presentation. My work is mostly about carbon project. So as we uh, mostly knows that the environment degradations already bring the oh yes, here it is. So as you can see from the screen, like our climate change already like increasing until 2017, it's already increased until like 1%. So based on the Paris agreements and also if you kind of like following the climate change, based on the Paris agreements in 2015, they already agreed to reduce the climate change until 1.5 or trying to kind of like increases at 20 degrees the most. And to be able to do that, they have this Article 6 that just been issued recently, and it recognized the possibility to having like a carbon market. So we're talking about climate change, we're talking about resilience, and by having this kind of like a carbon market, they try to be able to shift. So if like a country, they have a lot of like pollutants, they can buy the carbon credits from developing countries. And this kind of like mechanisms already create like issues, whether it's transparent or not, whether the carbon credits is valuable or not, because when we're talking about market, we're talking about standardizations, we're talking about transparency. But on the other hand, this mechanism is also useful for countries and also like communities. So I'm working with communities in a remote area, such as like in Sumatra and also like in Kalimantan, where they use this kind of like mechanism to support their forest activities. So in these areas, they have to challenge with palm oil plantation, for instance. So there's always like these caveats and also like several dimensions or on whether this market is good or not. So at the international level, they already have like a way to prevent, and you can also see this as part of resilience on how to protect the earth from global warming. But then there's also activities in the next slide, such as like perhutanan. So this is the area that I want to kind of like share more to you, where there's this like international initiative where the approach is more like top down, but there's also like a community such as Perhutana that is coming more from bottom down. So the history of Perhutana itself, like the idea already starting in 2017, and in 2020, they start to have this like community. So as you can see, it's involved Jatiwangi Art Factory, where their approach is very like artsy, and also they have like a residency in Berlin and in other countries. So their approach about what land is very different than from Tunas Nusa and Restore and Hutan Itu Kita, for instance, and also like the local governments that support this initiative. So why this initiative is interesting? Because first of all, it's kind of like top down, and now it's like bottom up. It's really coming from like their anxiety towards the environment. And when we ask the questions like what made you interest in this initiative, and they were talking about like, oh, it's important to have like oxygen. And why this particular area is important, because in the discussions before, we heard about like Jakarta, and in this initiative is located in the region of Rebana metropolitan area, and it's located in West Java province, Indonesia. And Rebana is a new urban-based development area that encompasses the core urban area of Cirebon, Kertajati, along supporting areas such as Cirebon, Sumedang, Indramayu, and Kuningan. So you can see that it's very important. We already have like megapolitan cities that is has some issues, but then on the other hand, we also start to kind of like increasing and developing the area as well. So having this initiative with different perspectives is very important. As you can see in the next slide, this is the activities that's been done by Tunas Nusa together with other organizations. And when we're talking about resilience, it's very important to kind of like highlighting like the type of participants that involved in the activities. And resilience for me is performative. So you can have like a program, but then what makes it work is really how it involves people, how to make things that make sense to the people, and also to basically just experiment. So Perhutana is like a living lab. So in the Netherlands, for instance, we have this EcoDrop Bukel, and it's worked as a living lab for biodiversity. So they experiment with 36 families in certain areas, and then they're really trying to do things that make it work. So in the last slide, I think I already passed my time limits, but then in the last slide, you can see that there are also like a bottom-up initiative where you can kind of like observe what has already been done in the change. So this is the picture that's taken in July and December. And you can also see that in December is more yellowish or drier than in July. So the nature itself also has like it's a natural resilient system where it's kind of like change over time. So yeah, to kind of like close my kind of like point, it's really about like performative. You may have like a very excellent framework, but then if you're not performative, you're not listening to what people on the ground said and what people think, it won't work. And it's also like very like local context related. So if you don't kind of like adjust what people want and what their interest is, it won't work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mbak Yuti, for the presentations on the first topic of this panel. It is interesting that you highlight Perhutana as a collective and local initiative of Perhutana in the Bandung metropolitan area, which will have more extensive urbanization due to metropolitan planning. And we also said about the performative action as a key point of this action on the mitigation on climate change. So next, we will delve into the topic of health, food security, and green ecosystems. Ibu Ramali Sobandi will share her thoughts, insights, and experience in establishing and managing Ruang Riung Ceria, a stunting prevention center and community food garden in Ranca Ekek, Bandung Regency. Ibu Ramali, the time and floor is yours.
Sorry. Okay. So good afternoon. I will share our experience since 2021 on the stunting prevention in Ranca Ekek Wetan. It's part of the Metropolitan of Bandung that start thinking about health. But then again, during the process, we realized that this stunting prevention could not be done if we are not talking about or doing things about food security. And then after we did with the food security, we realized that the whole things can be sustained, can restore the whole situation of livelihood as well as the environment if we see the process as an improvement of restoration of the green ecosystem. Next. So we are talking the future of children when we are talking about the stunting prevention. We are talking about an area, the red dot there. So we start in the 2nd January of 2021. Now it is on the 4th year. And we are using our framework of activities in Tunas Nusa that we see the city always in 3 layers, the micro level, which is like this is a neighborhood consists of 420 households, and the macro level, which is the yellow in the map, the Metropolitan of Bandung. And if you are looking of the theoretical base, we can tell about the health, One Health theory. Yeah. Next. When we are talking about Ruang Riung Ceria, the Center for Stunting Prevention of Tunas Nusa and Hate at Mine, we are talking about 5 principles. The first, that we have to do all the activities as an integrated activities. We do the activities inclusively. We are focusing on the local. We are doing the applied research together with the community by participatory. So we are talking about an area in Rancaikek Wetan for 480 households, 9 community, and the plot of the Ruang Riung Ceria only 135 meter square plot plus 38 meter square rooftop garden plus second garden for 124 meter square and the second rooftop for 21 meter square. It is important to understand the scale, because last year we succeed to have a harvest more than 700 kilo per year, and it's divided into all the community participants who are actively doing things in RRC, as well as the target group of stunting prevention family. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are doing the counseling. And on Tuesday, we are doing food making. And Thursday, we are doing the gardening. Next. So what is the conclusion? All the urbanization give impact to the peri-urban like Rancaikek Wetan. A lot of pressure. First, the change of land use from paddy field to settlement. It means they are losing place for water, the parking place for water. They are also changing activities, work from business to industry or informal sector. And the way they are doing, communicating with the neighborhood, from communal to transactional, everything has to be paid. And we are talking about degradation of environment from industrial, from domestic, from the left agriculture also, and utilities, for example, from the wet market pollution. So, in my opinion, when we are talking about health, food security, and green ecosystem, we are talking something like this. At the center, we are talking about the health, how the stunting as the big problems, issues at the peri-urban for the community can be intervened with 2 parts, the specific nutrient, the health system, and the sensitive intervention, include the environment, the hygiene, the water, the food security, and then the nurturing of the children with the family. But those interventions could not give good result if the governance is not good, the services from the government especially is not good, and the green ecosystem is also not be restored. So that's the way we have to incorporate the different elements. So the people, the marginalized, as Dennis say, and also Pak Sibarani, can be protected by all of us. Thank you. That's from me.
Thank you, Ibu Ramalis, for sharing your insight and experience with us. The approach of Ruang Riung Ceria in addressing public health issue, particularly stunting and food security in Bandung, will provide valuable knowledge, and this initiative can serve as a model to be shared and promoted in other areas. Let's move on to our next panelist, Ibu Rita Padawangi. Hello, Ibu Rita. Ibu Rita, we invite you to share your insights on governance and collaborative efforts, which are essential components in addressing urban challenges and opportunities in the development process. So, Ibu Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reza, for the opportunity, and thank you so much, Tunas Nusa, for having this webinar. And I've been learning so much from everybody. And so, in my turn here, I would just, I would like to share a story. This is a story about resilience, and I've been thank you to Barani for introducing about Jakarta. We know, my research has a lot of my research dealt with Jakarta as well, in particular with the urban poor communities in Jakarta. And I would like to open up with my story with this photo. So this photo is taken from the Jakarta Bay. And in this photo, you can see a lot of things. And this photo reflects really the diversity of the people in Jakarta. In the foreground, you see all the traditional fishermen mending their nets. At the back, you see all these like new apartment buildings coming up, right? And considering that in Indonesia is an urbanizing country, and so is the whole region of Southeast Asia, and the world is urbanizing. So something else is happening with urbanization. It's not just the economic growth that is happening, but as we know, there's a lot of more diversity, as well as potential frictions that are happening when the interests between these different groups of people are not really brought together very well. And speaking of resilience towards disasters, that's also one thing that we need to think about, is that when we have disasters, when we have floods affecting the city, the impact of those floods are unequal. If the city is full of social inequality, then the impact of disasters on the city is also unequally distributed. Now, I would also tell a story about this disaster in Jakarta that, like Barani already mentioned, we know that Jakarta is very notorious for its regular flooding. And this photo was taken maybe about 10 years ago. And this is a photo of a group of children actually practicing ballet. And this group actually, this photo was taken in the Ciliwung riverbank. So this community is very much prone to flooding. So if there's flooding in Jakarta that comes from the Ciliwung River, then this community will get it first. At the same time, they are actually, if we look at resilience, the definition of resilience, we do see traces of resilience coming from these communities if we just look carefully. Yeah. So these communities are not only the victims of flood, but they are also active actors to shape their livelihoods and to shape their life, given that there will be regular flooding. And these children here, they actually were identified as having quite a good talent in ballet, and they did go ahead and perform in Kuningan for a specially choreographed ballet based on their life along the Ciliwung. Now, what happened was that this photo was taken also about like 8 years ago. So that photo, that ballet lesson happened before this. Yeah. So this one was something that was done by the government of Jakarta to mitigate flood. And what they did was to create walls. Building walls seems to be a very popular thing to do these days. I don't know why, but these walls are supposed to protect the people from the floods. There's only one problem here, is that oftentimes if the flood is really bad, then they will actually overcome the walls, and then you will have water trapped in the community. But this is the usual approach that the government does when it comes to mitigating flood disasters. And this is another one. Besides the walls that are built along the Ciliwung riverbank in Jakarta, so this is a waduk dam in Ciawi. Is a dam basically to prevent water from going to Jakarta if there is like high rainfall. So the approach seems to be always very, very much deal with construction, constructing new things. And all these kinds of approaches, although they are framed in the name of resilience, making cities more resilient to floods, they actually is very contradictory, because if we look at what is actually causing Jakarta's floods, many people have actually researched on this, is because of too much developments. There's too little green areas, both in Jakarta and in the upstream areas, but it's still development is still going on. And this is these are data like from 1972 and the modeling towards 2030. BAU means business as usual. If business as usual is going on, then you will have this is the Ciliwung watershed, and look at that. Look at the amount of red there. That means those are developed areas. So the problem is actually too much developed areas, like you pour concrete on soil. But ironically, the solution is always pour more concrete on soil. Now, and there are impacts of this. So it's not just the flood disaster impact on people that are unequally distributed, but also the impact of the development of projects that in the name of flood mitigation. And these actually also affect communities along the riverbank. I don't think that these communities were happy with what happened in their neighborhoods. So if you remember the group who was doing ballet earlier, they no longer exist, because the bulldozer here at the bottom left, that particular bulldozer in that photo was tearing down the place where they did their rehearsals. Yeah. So I would like to bring our discussion also, when we say resilience, then the question is not about just what, not resilience against what, but who is resilience? Who is making the decision, and who is supposed to be resilient? And if we look into the experience of the Ciliwung, it doesn't mean that they don't have any ideas, they don't have any proposals. They were really they know that their living situation is not ideal, and they actively come up with ideas on how to mitigate the situation. And this is one of the things that they propose, that these participatory housing that they propose. And just to not prolong the story, of course, this didn't get built. And there were a lot of very, very, very painful lawsuits that are going on between the people and the government. So again, the question is who are we talking about when we say about resilience? Who is supposed to be resilient, and who is making the decisions? And I just want to close with this photo over here. This is also a photo of the Ciliwung. And you might be wondering why I'm showing this photo. This photo is not even in Jakarta. This one is actually in the upstream. And Barani would know where this photo is. But this is also the Ciliwung. And this is in Bogor. And this photo was taken during the time when a bridge over the Ciliwung was being renovated. And it's being renovated for a long time. And look at this bridge. So this bridge appeared because the official bridge was not functioning. And look at how this bridge is being operated. You can see all these sacks. And then there's this bucket there. You can actually donate some money for the caretaking of this temporary bridge. What I'm saying is that if we just listen and pay attention to what is going on in these communities and who we are expecting to be resilient, for whom the cities are, then actually there are many things, there are many potentials, and the communities are active. It's their life. They would do something about it. And unfortunately, and we can discuss about this, unfortunately, the track record is that I think most solutions actually come from the community, not from the government. And also, if we go back to let me show you this photo here. Right here is one of the communities that got that got evicted in the name of, I don't know, prevention towards sea level rise and whatever it is. This is on Jakarta Bay. They recently won the World Habitat Award, the Gold World Habitat Award 2024. This wouldn't happen if the community is not persistent in pushing for the participatory housing. So I would like to call for more attention towards what we can learn from the communities, not so much of what we can do first. What we have to ask ourselves, what we can learn first from these communities, and then we ask what we can do with the communities, not what we can do as ourselves, but what we can do as communities. These are not me. Like, I don't live there. So if I want to intervene there, I better know what I'm doing. And they would know exactly what is happening there. Anyway, thank you so much, Reza. I return the facilitation back to you.
Thank you to you, Burita, for the presentation and bringing up the environmental justice perspective on your presentation. And I can highlight from your speech that the story of resilience are sometimes have an asymmetry that put the marginalized people as a culprit, and how the program to mitigate the situation is always technocratic solution with all of the wall that is not aligned with natural system. And we need to think about who are we talking about when we talk about resilience, and who have a say to create a policy for resiliency program. Okay, and for our final panelists in this session, we have here with us Dr. Emin Yahya Mentesi, PhD. Dr. Emin, could you please share your insights and perspectives on the critical global issues of disaster management, safety, and urban resilience? So, Dr. Emin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Reza. And I think it will be a very timely presentation or speech because it will resonate, I think, what Rita was just mentioning. So I would just like to shortly share my screen, if you allow me. So I will mention about the project that we have been involved in the last 5 years, which is called Tomorrow Cities. And now I will actually explain about its decision support environment that we have developed and that addresses working globally to reduce disaster risk, especially for the urban poor and also for the marginalized groups. It's one of the hubs that is being funded by UKRI, and our project has recently ended, which basically presents 5 key steps for a resilient urban future. It starts with a future visioning process, continues with urban scenarios, hazard impact modeling, risk agreement implementation pathways, and I will explain very briefly what they are. But before that, why Tomorrow Cities? Because population is increasing, cities are expanding, and poor communities are also increasing by number, and hazards are being more diverse, more than ever, with the amplification of the climate change. Also, we know that around 60% of the area to be urbanized is still to be built. So this gives us an opportunity to better prepare and better plan the future, the tomorrow cities. So how do we approach this? If you recall the diagram that I show you, we start with communities. We, as planners or as experts, we do not go to a city and deploy this planning mechanism as expert-driven process. Instead, we ask community groups, what do they want from their future, what they desire, what are their aspirations, and we gather their aspirations, expectations from future, actually, from the area that they're living. They draw maps, they identify their problems, they identify their dreams, etc. And then we gather with them with different times, at different time scales, but at the end of the day, what they bring us is a community map, some key elements of policy, and what kind of a future they desire. On the left-hand side, you see a community drawn map, which represents how they wish their future. And on the right-hand side, as we call urban scenario, is a translated version of this, translated by the experts. And again, with the community, validated with the community groups. So what we do is actually, first, we try to understand what they want from the future, then we translate it into a regular planning discipline language, as we put it. And we create an urban scenario. But then this isn't enough to understand the potential impacts for the future. Then what we do is we subject those urban scenarios to multi-hazards. With our bespoke vulnerability models, we try to understand how earthquakes, floods, or different types of hazards will impact those urban scenarios, those urban futures that people are dreaming of. So once we have those numbers with the help of our bespoke software programs, we again gather with those community groups. And the narrative in those gatherings is that we were together with you while dreaming about the future, and then we subjected your dreams against multi-hazards, against climate change impacts. And we showcase the results, the impacts to the communities, and then they discuss again. They try to understand what they did right, what they did wrong, or what can be done better for a resilient urban context. So based on those learnings, based on understanding risk in that sense, we try to create implementation pathways with the collaboration of the decision makers, community groups, community representatives. Our key aspect here is we want to give voice to the ones that are not participating in the decision-making procedures, that are not a part of the urban development process, like handicapped people, like youngs, elderlies, disabled people, marginalized groups, urban poor. All of those different segments of the groups are a part of the future visioning exercise and our community interactions. And we want their aspirations to be embedded within the decision-making procedure. So our approach is also supported by a capacity strengthening program that is aimed towards the decision makers or local governments in the local contexts. And we want to make them understand, especially in the global south context, we want them to understand having a community-based and risk-oriented urban planning mechanism can help us build resilient futures. And this is just a reminder for the decision support environment. We start with communities. In the risk agreement, we gather with them again. And then in the implementation pathways, we gather with the decision-making authorities to engage the decisions that have been taken. It's a very large group of groups that we have been working with. We are working with different institutions and different community groups from different countries. We have been working in 10 different cities in the last 5 years. And now we are willing to engage other institutions and stakeholders into our community of practice so that we can build safer futures. So if you would like to learn more about what we are doing as Tomorrow Cities and how Tomorrow Cities decision environment can be adopted in your city context or in your research environment, please contact us from those contact details. And also you can contact directly through me. And I would like to hand it over to moderation. And thank you for this invitation and chance for me to explain my insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Emin. It is really interesting that you talk about participative future visioning and urban scenarios in Tomorrow City. That is really important in building city resilience and preparedness to disaster. And I think it's really resonated with other panelists' presentation. And you talk about the understanding risk or risk management, risk agreement, as a fair method to look at disaster risk. So we look at the risk of the disaster, not only from the perspective of the government or the private sector, but also from the perspective of people that live in the disaster area. And now I would like to invite our two discussants, Ibu Alfa and Pak Roni, to share their response to the presentation by our panelists. And Ibu Alfa and Pak Roni, please also provide your insights on the topics from your own perspective and areas of expertise. Additionally, I encourage both of you to pose a question too, if you have, to the panelists for further discussion. Maybe we will start from Ibu Alfa. Soraya.
Thank you, Pak Reza. Thank you for the opportunity for me participating in this webinar. So I come from PT Patra Jasa, which is the subsidiary of PT Pertamina, which we know is the national oil company in Indonesia. And one of the contribution or the discussion that we are interested in is regarding the energy factor that is going to impact on the development of the cities as well. So not only that we are developing a new technology and new sources of energy not being dependent only on fossil fuel. As a developer under the name of the energy company, we are also having some research on sustainability centers. That is going to be one of the key area that is going to be developed in our new capital of Nusantara. So what I can share briefly that we have a vision for accelerating energy transition through sustainable and low carbon technologies and partnership. So this we would like to project this into a master plan that will involve infrastructure powered by sustainable and low carbon technology, and second is sustainable and low carbon energy innovation, research and labs, and then network and collaboration on sustainable and low carbon technology. And then last but not least is the skilling a workforce development to support energy transition with the enables of digital technology and facility, for example, smart city technology, residential and healthcare, and then regulatory support, and then public and private funding. For the key outputs, we would like, the aim was to accelerate energy transition to promote sustainable and low carbon technology that help meet the net zero targets, and then creating economic growth to increase jobs, higher wages, and stronger local economy, and then technology advancement to create opportunity for advancement in sustainability and related fields, and creating skilled workforce that will provide highly skilled and adaptable workforce that can meet the sustainable needs of the region. So how will it be implemented? So there will be a hub that will be a combination of different kind of building typology, which constitute of education, and then academy and labs, testing labs, and then sustainable and low carbon infrastructure for renewable energy. And then we will have sustainability startups and the business connection between the players in sustainability industry. And then we will have also research and innovation center for sustainability and low carbon technologies. And for the first step, we are going to develop is the new Research and Innovation Center for Sustainability. So beyond research and commercial, opportunities exist to utilize the green spaces for new technology, ecotourism, and other range of green projects. We have green products and nature-based solution and collaborate with local businesses to develop green products and nature-based solution, including sustainable building materials, herbal products, and natural dyes. And then forest-based workshops and retreats. We would like to promote the green spaces as a retreat destination and conducting workshops, wellness programs, and other programs that focuses on sustainability. We will have also ecotourism and recreation to develop eco-friendly lodging options like cabins and tree houses and so on to attract ecotourism in the area. And we will also have outdoor classroom and research station to create outdoor classrooms and research stations in the green areas for educational purposes, and conservation and restoration projects with collaboration with environmental organization and government agency. So not only for the infrastructure of the green technology or the sustainable low carbon technology, but also how to utilize also the area and the green spaces as part of the educational and collaboration spaces that at the end will not only promoting the company itself, but also having impact on the national level, and for especially in the development of new Nusantara capital city, where sustainability becomes the core of the urban development that is going to be developed, and with the aim of zero net energy in 2060. So that is one of our research and contribution that we are currently doing for the state-owned government company. So that's all, Pak Riza.
Thank you, Alpha, for your response on the topics of this discussion through your perspective from private developer plans. And thank you for sharing the green strategy of Pertamina on sustainable and low carbon technology for mitigating climate change impact. Hope that more of private entities will follow these strategies. On the next opportunity, I will give to Bapak Roni Smets for giving your thoughts on this topic. I think will be interesting because you have from another background, the art and photography perspective. So the floor is yours, Bapak Roni.
Thank you, Paris. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all. It was so far wonderful conversation. So I like to share also my screen to give more an idea, and then I will give some thoughts about what I'm doing. So I share my screen. Wait. Yeah, I need the PowerPoint. This one. Okay. And then start. Okay, you see the PowerPoint? Yes? Okay.
Not yet.
What you say?
It's still on your folder.
It's not okay. I have to. Something goes wrong then. What's happening then? Wait. I open maybe first the PowerPoint and then. Why is it not working? Okay, share screen again. Here it is. Okay, this one, share. And now
it shows.
Start the PowerPoint. Is it better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I'm working on for a long time on catastrophes related to climate and natural disasters for a long time in several countries, and I'd just like to share some thoughts with you. So often the scale is unimaginable. For instance, you all also know the tsunami in Aceh, where at least 170,000 people killed. But here it's just a flooded rice field, and compared to Belgium, it's just a flooding. But the problem is, this is in Myanmar. So the poor people, they live in the fields, and the water came very quick, and a lot of people drowned. So sometimes you can't see the scale on the image, and it's also about questioning how will the communities and the people and the landscape recover from disasters like here in the Philippines. It's 1 year after a devastating cyclone, and we know that also with climate change, more and more natural disasters will happen. It's about, this was a general level, but it's also a micro level, the personal dramas. So I was by coincidence in Myanmar during the cyclone. Was there for trying to make pictures of the new capital, but it was forbidden. I got caught and things like that. Okay, I was then during the cyclone there, and I was in Yangon, and without information, because I hadn't any news anymore, I thought it should be it's a delta, it should be worse. And with my tsunami experience, I went to the delta, and yeah, I saw there terrible, terrible things. So I went to those places, and so for here instance, a family lost their houses, and I also try to revisit people. So 2 years after, I can't do, yeah, okay, yeah, 2 years after, I went to the same area again with small pictures. So I tried to find some families again. And this is the same family. They rebuilt their houses without help from the government. So that's the new place where they lived. So it's about, yeah, being desperate, but also a bit about hope. My work. I just show some pictures. Like here, a room with a view. So always, yeah, remembrance of a family once lived there with their children and things like that. Like here in Nepal after an earthquake, all the colors on the wall is just a remembrance of people living there in their apartment. It's also about media attention, my work. It's about, and the media attention is sometimes very short. And if there is media attention, because there are more and more natural disasters and climate due to climate, and some get in the news, and most don't, even don't get in the news. And it's also a bit about, I call it the domestication of the disaster. For instance, and what I mean about that, in the Western world, the more Western people who are involved, the bigger the media attention. For instance, the devastating tsunami disaster in 2004. So at that moment, it was Boxing Day, it was the Christmas time, and so the news was very low here. And at a certain moment, at the news agencies in Belgium, so a fax came in. So tsunami, Sri Lanka, 5,000 people dead. Okay, should we travel to Sri Lanka? Yes, we go. But then in the afternoon, another fax came in. 12 Belgian or 10 Belgian dead in Thailand. So they rechanged their flight. They didn't go to Sri Lanka. They went to Thailand because 12 Belgian people were primarily more important than the 5,000 Sri Lankan were dead. And once they were in Thailand, and the news came in from Aceh, so 170 people at least died there. But still, you see what's happening in the media, that most of the images which were shot during the devastating tsunami disaster in Aceh were all shot in Banda Aceh during 3 or 4 weeks after the disaster, but hardly no images exist, let's say, between the stretch of between Meulabo and Banda Aceh, and except for one journalist in Meulabo. So, and it's all about coming home with as spectacular images as possible. And I had the same experience in Myanmar. I was during the disaster there, and the media found me, and I've seen dead bodies there for sure, but I didn't want to explore it. For me, it's more about the people, the landscape, the communities torn apart, and what are they? How will they recover? So I covered that disaster, was during disaster, as if I was after the disaster there. In the future, I refused to send dead bodies, and then news agencies in New York said to me, "Oh, Ronnie, nice pictures, but please send me dead bodies." I didn't do. I refused. It cost me a lot of money, but I just refused. So for here instance, it's a woman. She lost her husband and her child during the cyclone there. And it's also about, it has double layers. You see there a little horse on the right. It's not from her child, but it's a religious object of her belief. I revisited also this woman again, but unfortunately, this is her new home, but she wasn't home. She was out for working. So I'm often revisiting places. And it's also about reconstruction with and without help. So what I see often, people just do it themselves or starting themselves to reconstruct, to have at least a shelter to survive the next days. Doing it herself. Here in China, it was more government organized. In Aceh, yeah, then I will talk later about Aceh. So you've seen after the disaster quite often NGOs, but there is a good and a bad thing about that. So you have what I often see, NGOs like USAID, big organizations, and there are other ones. Okay, except for providing shelters and material for fishing. What I've seen, for instance, in Aceh, so that they're building new communities, but it's often without. It was at that time often without consulting the communities, and in my experience. Also in Aceh, and I put an image here from my last visit. For me, the NGOs who are really communicating with the communities and discussing and informing the communities, for me, they will have the biggest impact. I've seen that with my last visit in Indonesia, the Tusanusa Foundation and Roma Mal. One about mainly water, and at that moment, and the other one about rethinking public spaces after an earthquake. Maybe we can provide more public spaces. I think it's very, very important. And I've also seen that in Aceh after the disaster. I visited Aceh 500 days after the disaster, also 10 years after, and also revisited this day. And the NGOs with that at that moment, it was Binadesa, providing small things to recover the economy. For me, I think it's a very important thing. So it's also about sometimes religion. So what I've also seen during my visits, the first thing which will be rebuilt, that I understand, it's community, it's religions. So not only in the Islamic world, but also in the Christian world here in the Philippines and in the Buddhist world, like Myanmar. So I see there are also similarities. And my work it's mainly about life and hopes, life after disaster. So building again communities with and festivities in an in an area which is a bit distracted. children starting playing again, small businesses recovering again, and the people on my images are mostly people.
Ronnie, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, your time 1 minute left. Maybe
1 minute. Okay, yeah. So the people on the images are people who never got the news. So I try to give them a face. So I'll go very quick, show some images, and it's about communities torn apart. Okay. And building new communities, and it's about revisiting places, and about holiday must go on. So after a disaster, 1 year after disaster, or tourists again and building new hotels, and it's about. Okay, I will finish, but about remembrance places, and I want to show one here. It was in Phuket, Thailand, and tourists can drive this jeep to have fun with tsunami 2004 on it, but you'd have to know at least 200,000 people died. So it's about generations, like here, little boy that 10 years old, he was born during the tsunami. And I will finish now. So this is from my last visit. It's about people dealing and have all stories, like here the pictures on the wall. The man lost his son during the tsunami, and everyone has a story. That's my work about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Ronnie, for
Okay,
sharing the story of
I will
disaster to your
stop
pictures.
sharing.
And
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I think you highlight the issue of humanity in the context of disaster that's sometimes badly capitalized through some pictures as well. And you talk about the reconstruction, NGO, and life and hopes after disaster about your work. And I think that is all we need. Let's continue to the Q&A session. I will continue to ask to Mbak Yuti, our first panelist. Mbak Yuti, given its significant impact leading to extensive environmental degradation, to what extent can urbanization contribute to restoring degraded ecosystem, in your opinion? And additionally, what is the key factor in unlocking this potential of urbanization?
So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity and the question. So from my case study and also from my experience, like the most important things about urbanization is like if you want to have like a transition or move somewhere, you need to have to understand like the local context, and also like as many speakers already mentioned, Gurita and others, for instance, is also like a questions about like who. So who do we involve, and also like listening, because when we're talking about like bottom-up approach, even if there's already like a framework that's able to kind of like accept the diversity, we really need to understand like what's the local context needs. So when I went with Tunas Nusa to go with Tupar Hutana, for instance, it's also important to kind of like match with the school curriculum. So like the new school curriculum, they have like the opportunity to engage with other organizations. So like one of the key is to have like the openness to collaborate, and also like to really listen and to kind of like grab the opportunity. So in the transition process, you can always kind of like complain about the bureaucracy and also like the administration stuff, but there's also like an enabling process where you can also like capture and also like collaborate with others. So when we're talking about like the urbanizations and opportunity, it's very important to kind of like capture the new opportunity, and always like reflective on the questions about like who will benefit, who will get the opportunity, and what is the trade-off of like a new actions. Yeah, that's from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mbak Yuti, for your answer. So I highlight the local context that needs to match with also the curricula and the openness to collaborative actions, and we have to be more reflective to question who is benefited, who is impacted, to be more equitable in that program. Next, I will ask to Ibu Ramalis. Ibu Ramalis, based on your experience in establishing Ruang Riung Ceria, what lessons can be shared to disseminate the knowledge of Ruang Riung Ceria to address public health and food security in other locations, maybe, or in a larger scale?
Thank you, Reza, for the question. A lot of people also asking the same. There's a lot of people also ask about the similar question. And all the time, I always tell the most important thing is the local champion. It could be from inside, internal, or the communal itself, or outside. And the first task of her or him, it listen and understand the local situation, the local characteristic, who are the champion, the real person there. And then every places should have make their own trajectories and process and approach, but it starts with understanding the local situation itself. And yes, we face a lot of local politics, but then again, persistence and continuity and building the trust will answer the need of the people. So we have to start with learning what they want, what they need, what they can, and then start as soon as possible, and then building up with its own characters. The most important lesson that we receive in Ruang Riung Ceria is that they listen to us when we listen to them. And we cannot burden them with a new ideas, new tasks, or new program if they are hungry. So we start with the basic first. I think that's method can be replicated in anywhere, but we cannot make it tolerate.
Thank you, Ibu Ramalis. It resonates as well, the local, about what Ibu Yuti said as well. And you talk about the ability to listen is also the key, and we need to have a local champion in the area. And now I will move to Ibu Rita. I'm really interested with your pictures, the story of the resilience. And from that picture, I can see that the climate change mitigation and adaptation programs in urban areas often exclude marginalized and vulnerable population from governance and collaborative process. My question is, how do you see this issue as a challenge in mitigating climate change impact in cities? Additionally, how can we promote a shift towards people-centered policies in the development process? Because sometimes this program is too dependent on the local leaders. So every time the local leaders change, then the policies change. And so how do you see about this?
Thank you, Reza. Yeah, I really agree on what Bu Ramalis just said. Listening is actually very important. I actually have a more how to say less less positive view about urbanization. I think we also, when we talk about climate change and all the environmental degradation, the problems that we are seeing now around the world, it actually goes along with the level of urbanization. And if we just stop and think about, so we saw in some of the videos that when we were waiting for this webinar, that cities can, should be the solution. I think it is actually a challenge, because to me, when you look at climate change, cities are more often the problem rather than solution. Let's just be very clear here. Let's just call a spade a spade. Which city in the world is not screwing up other places? Right? You look at all your gadgets that you have around that we have around us. All these raw materials that enable us to do all the conversations that we have now, they are all coming from some source elsewhere. and we are still dependent a lot on mining. Bharani mentioned about the pollution in Jakarta. The pollution in Jakarta, well, it's of no surprise. The source is not only from the cars or automobiles. A lot of the pollution of PM 2.5 are actually from, surprise, surprise, coal power plants, and they are one of the dirtiest sources of energy. And where did the coal come from? Well, it's not from Jakarta for sure. It's actually from elsewhere. And have we actually looked at like all these landscapes that are destroyed by all the mining practices, especially the unethical ones? And there are questions about, how do we rethink? If we really think that cities should be part of the solution, then maybe there's something that needs to be changed in the process. The process on how we get things, how we produce things, really bring people really closer to nature and to be able to appreciate it. And also these marginalized populations in the city who are often become victims, again, of all these environmental degradation. They have to settle in environmentally compromised spaces and also be more exposed to pollution, to flooding. But many of them actually come from the hinterlands because of the lack of economic opportunities outside the city. And that's why they come to the city. Lack of education opportunities. That's why they come to the city. So cities actually, unfortunately, oftentimes function as predators to the hinterlands. We suck up all the raw materials, we suck up all the labor, we suck up all the future generation, and then when they get to the city, they are not appreciated, and they become part of the marginalized population again. So I do think that there is a structural issue that is going on here. I think it is a good start to have like-minded individuals who are progressive thinking and all that, to have even like local leaders and dependent on local leaders. That's already like something, but we all know that that is not the solution. The solution is really to have a structural change. The way we think about cities, the way we develop cities. My story about mitigating flood by building walls is actually a manifestation of that structural problem, right? Why do every time there is an environmental issue, why is the solution always have to be? Why does it always have to be project based? And then we come across, oh, that's because that's how governments operate. That's how terms and projects were procured. Okay, that's one thing. But how about exploring other ways? If the government cannot do this, what then will be the role of the government, right? How do we actually make things work with all these like subpar structures that we have to deal with every time? So I do think I don't want to discourage all the efforts that are being made right now, because if we don't do anything, then they will just stay still. But at the same time, I think all the efforts that are done to sort of mitigate climate change impacts, as well as to build more resilient cities, we have to realize that it cannot be just project based. We have to each of the project, if it has to be projects, we have to think of the bigger plan and the bigger vision, that each of these initiatives need to be able to be mapped to the greater objective, which is to push for better structure of the society, better structure of the economy. Some pointed out, is it really sustainable to just think about, the economy has to keep growing. Okay, economy has to keep growing, but they consume resources, they consume spaces, and it creates a lot of tensions and contradictions. So how do we address that? How do we address the contradictions? We can't just again work on certain fields and sectors. It needs to build towards a more structural and change for more sustainable future. Thank you.
Ibu Rita. What a lot of homework that we still have to do. We have to have a structural change to cope with our structural problems, and bringing people closer to the nature is also we have to think about when we think about the disaster. So now I will move to Dr. Emin. I have a question regarding your presentation, Dr. Emin. So my question is, what do you think that we can learn from your experience in Tomorrow City, TCB SE, that we can replicate to mitigate the disaster in our area based on the community needs, and what is the most crucial thing that we have to consider it based on your experience in a lot of area that TCBSE have already experienced?
Yeah, thank you, Reza. I think taking from where Rita just left is, I think we are focusing on a very structural area of the urbanization process, because so for us it's a given, like urbanization is going to happen. We cannot avoid it. Unfortunately, that's the fact. We have to live with it. So for us, the problem is how do we restructure the planning procedures so that the new cities that will emerge, they are resilient against potential hazards. So that was our key question. But in order to do that, whilst reducing disaster risk or aiming to reduce disaster risk, first, we need to be equitable so that we are not hampering the livelihoods, we are not hampering the social benefits of the community groups. This is one of the key aspects. So we need to consider the community as the core component of the urbanization process. So that's our key takeaway, and that's the core of our approach. Taking it from the community core, then the next thing is we need to look into the future component, because most of the time in the current urban planning practices, what we observe is it is very short-sighted. They're looking into like 5 years, 10 years, etc. But the reality is, as the climate change is showing to us, the reality is in the next 30 years or in the next 50 years, the existing cities, they will be dealing with very severe natural hazards than we are dealing today. So we need to have a more far-sighted, forward-looking approach in that sense. So taking it from the community, looking into a further future, let's say, these are the key components, then these are the key critical elements for the urban planning mechanisms. And the next thing is making it really risk-informed. By risk-informed, we mean that we need to compute potential future risk that can occur under given the urbanization scenarios. So if there are some urbanization scenarios that a government has, then this has to be basically subjected to potential natural hazard to see how they're performing against, because usually this is not done. So they're only looking into existing risks or existing natural hazards, and then in the next 5 years, with the amplification of natural climate change, the rainfall data, the rainfall intensity, it is increasing. So the computations that we are doing today with the existing information is useless in the next 5 years. So all the infrastructure investments, all the urban development practices that we are adopting, they are basically useless, and moreover, they are increasing future risk. So in order to avoid, we need to have proper forward-looking impact modeling mechanisms as we are trying to solve this issue. And this has to be a part of the urban development procedures in the first place through mainstreaming these into urban planning. So key takeaways, it has to be community-based. It is not participatory, it is community-based. So it has to start with the community. Because when you say participatory, it is more like some group of experts are gathering together and then they are participating community. It has to be vice versa. Community is at the center, and basically the governments, they are the facilitators for making those dreams happen in the future. And experts are the facilitators in this urban planning process. So we are trying to make this shift. And the second thing is, it has to be looking into further future so that we are addressing those potential future risks. And the third thing is, it has to be risk informed. We need to compute our decisions. We need to test our decisions against future risks. Otherwise, the existing decisions that we make with the existing information, they will be useless and they will be increasing the risk in the future. So these three aspects, I think, are the key critical elements that we are targeting, and we are willing to incorporate these three key elements into the urban planning mechanisms, especially in the global south or developing country contexts. So that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Amin, for your answer that disaster management will be critical and be community-based and community is at the center, not only the participating but also oriented to the community. So it's a really interesting discussion, but unfortunately we already have run out of time, so we have to conclude this panel. I cannot thank you enough to all the panelists, Ibu Yuti, Bu Ramalis, Bu Rita, and Dr. Amin, and also to our discussant, Bu Alfa and Pak Roni, and to all of the participants that joined our discussion in this panel in mapping the issue of climate change and urban resilience in four aspects that we discussed. We really appreciate it. So thank you again for all your participation. For the next session, I hand over back to Mbak Resha. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to all of the speakers, Ibu Yuti, Ibu Ramalis, Ibu Rita, Pak Amin, Ibu Alfa, Pak Roni, and also to Pak Reza for the great and aspiring discussions. Before we move to the second panel, I want to remind you all that we are open for your valuable inputs. These are opportunity to share your ideas or reflections on the topics discussed today. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with the speakers and fellow participants, you can use the chat box. You can share suggestions for future research, potential collaborations, or simply your personal takeaways from the presentations and discussion. Our speakers will be monitoring the chat and may respond to some of the comments directly. Let's make the most of this opportunity to connect and collaborate. We now move to our second panel, discussing practices and experiences. This panel will delve into practical solutions, community initiatives, and the role of effective governance in building urban resilience. The themes for this panel are community initiatives and experimental research on climate change and urban resilience, regulation and good governance, the regional ecosystems and urban biodiversity, and negotiated knowledge production and distribution. This panel will be moderated by Ibu Budiati Prasetyamartati. Ibu Dias is the Director of Ocean Program at Konservasi Indonesia. She has worked for over 20 years on governance, policy reforms, development planning, program management, and research with multilateral and bilateral organizations, NGO, governments, and research institutions. I now hand over the moderation of the panel to Ibu Dias. Please, Ibu Dias, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Reza. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. So this is the second panel that we will talk about practices and experiences. And for this panel, we will have 4 panelists who will provide their case studies and experiences to all of us. And then there will be 2 discussions for this panel after we hear the presentations from the panelists. I think we would like to show now the short bio of the panelists. Is it possible for the organizer to share the screen? Yeah. Thank you. So the first speakers is Darren Leung from Lingnan University. Darren is a research assistant professor from the Department of Cultural Studies at Lingnan University. He earned his PhD in Cultural Studies from the University of Sydney in 2021, where his doctoral thesis reached the final round of the prestigious Inter-Asia Cultural Studies Thesis Prize. Leung's research primarily centers on the material politics of food and waste, exploring their relationship with the technology, history, and community within China and beyond. Our second panelist is Nuket İpekçetin from Gebze Technical University, Turkey. Nuket is an urban and regional planner with over 10 years of experience in spatial planning research, education, and design. Her research focuses on the intersection between the environmental management, urban ecology, disaster risk reduction, and spatial planning. Our third panelist is Bapak Angga Dwi Artama from the School of Life Sciences and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung, Indonesia. He is also a Vice Dean for Resources Affairs in the faculty. His research focuses on multiple aspects of the environmental and agri-food studies that relates with value chain, environmental governance, alternative food networks, food security, and many others. Our fourth panelist is Ibu Dominique Lamli from Switzerland. She is an artist and a philosopher whose approaches work in site and situation specifics, collaborative performance, and studio-based settings using rich media. She received her PhD in Global Studies, holds a lectureship at the Zurich University of the Arts, and she is also a co-founder and director of Research Hub for Flux and MIA GmbH. Last but not least is our discussants. We will have two discussants. The first one is Judicael Dietrich, or we can call her Judith. She is an assistant professor from Lyon 3 University, France. Her PhD is in geography and is an assistant professor in the Lyon 3 University. Her research is in social geography and urban geography, focuses on precariousness and poverty in cities, access to water, and related urban policies. Our last discussion is Bapak Doni Kurniawan. He is from Bandung Institute of Technology, from the School of Architecture, Planning, and Policy Development. He is also a member of Indonesia Architect Institute and highly experienced in green building research and development, and also the member of Development of Sustainable Region in the Center of Energy Studies. So we would like to start the presentation from four panelists, which will start from Darren. Darren, your time is around 3 minutes. Darren will talk about community initiatives and experimental research on climate change and urban resilience. I hope you can stick to the time around 3 minutes. Thank you, Darren.
So is it 10 minutes or 3 minutes?
3.
3 minutes. Okay, cool. All right. I'm Darren Lang. Thank you for the invitation and the introductions. So I will share some my teaching and research in Hong Kong about how we respond to the food waste challenge or crisis in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, food waste constitutes more than 40% of the city's municipal solid waste in 2011, and it's a lot. And this figure outpaces other than cities like Tokyo, Seoul, and Taipei. And the problem of food waste with the landfill disposal will not be spectacular as others ecological disasters if you are not live nearby the landfill. Okay, so oops. So this persistent food waste problem has escalated into societal and environmental crisis, and in Hong Kong, the public action or public participation for waste reductions is desperately needed because the government's mobilization is really low. So and it also depends on the technocratic discourse of waste management in this capitalist city, which remains neoliberal solutions for technological and moral fixed. That means citizens are subject to a sort of like individualistic form of responsibility, and also duty, limiting them to the domestic waste sorting instead of like other collective action in the community. So inspired by Donna Haraway's notion, staying with the trouble, I want to create a learning space for those young people in university to learn the skills and also learn the knowledge in the community to see any possible community-oriented solutions for this problem, the wasteful prison of Hong Kong. So this is how my teaching model work. Like I has been teaching this course for like 2 years, and then it's kind of like experiential learning model, and students have to work with the community members and groups to learn from them how to collect waste from restaurant and from multiple restaurant and waste market, and also to compost in the community garden or some farms. So in terms of rural-urban connection. And the key thing from this experience is that they had to unlearn waste, particularly the attachment, the sensation to the dirt. You know, like hygiene is not hygiene, it's toxic, and it should be distanced from us. And also learn farming technique to do compost. There's a different kind of like technique they learn in the farm. And the objective of this program is to allow or empower young people working with the community for environmental actions, and also increase their community engagement. So actually I prepared a video, but I only have a few minutes, so I skip it. So go to the conclusion. So I just wrote a paper on staying a bit closer with the trouble is the title of my paper. I just submitted, and through this like 2 years experience, students always mention what they experience from this program. Stinky, sweaty, you know, it takes lots of labor, and also valuable, which means they do not have the chance, never have the chance to touch on their own kitchen waste or others' kitchen waste. So it's valuable for them. So during the process, during the program, one thing I really touched me is how they could undo their hygiene attachment on waste by the way of like valuing it, touch it, transform it through those like volunteer labor in the farm and also in the market. And then in the farm, they through compost they learn how to animate the environment for soil, because for those kids they did not before joining the program, they did not have the chance to visit the farm, and they don't know there's farms in Hong Kong. Even though the farming industry in Hong Kong is really narrow today. And also they do not just through composting, they are doing experimentations on a kind of like more than human care, because they do not just care how to reduce waste in the community, but also they know if they can transform waste into other form of like common pool resources, they can benefit many lives, not just the farm, but also the animal, bacteria, rooms in the environment. And also, if their farming is successful, they will redistribute some like vegetables to the restaurants and community members. So lastly, I want to conclude all this thing in a term of like art of transience. It involves 3 things: the locally situated knowledge of soil that associate with its inhabiting rural-urban nexus. Second, the careful labor that make no abstract but concrete practice to deal with the so-called ecological disaster or crisis we create as a city. And lastly, the art of transience create or empower the thing I call a humble subjectivity, that human being could be able to repair the wounds, the trouble, instead of like seeking the ideals. So so that is my, is it 3 minutes end, right? Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Darren, for the presentation. So we will go to the next panelist, Nuket Itekcetin, who will talk about regulatory governance on climate change adaptation practices from Turkey. The floor is yours, Nuket.
Thank you so much. Can you see my screen, actually?
Yes.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we see it well.
Thank you. Actually, I have a very limited time. That's why I want to summarize the main issues that the practices in Turkey in terms of regulatory governance on climate change adaptation. Actually, Turkey, you know that Turkey is in the Mediterranean basin, and that's why it's one of the most vulnerable regions in terms of the climate change impacts. And the Menin report says that the future impacts of climate change will be higher rate in the Mediterranean than the world average. Therefore, the countries of the Mediterranean, and as well as Turkey, need to make some solid and tangible climate change adaptation actions to manage these future risks and to reduce the vulnerabilities in cities and to increase resilience as well. That's why the climate change adaptation process in Turkey, we can say that it has evolved significantly over the past 2 decades, and mainly driven by the global commitments and improvements in the European Union context, because Turkey wants to be a member of the European Union. That's why there's lots of cooperations and between European Union and Turkey. And as a brief history, we can say that the process was started in 2004 with becoming Turkey a part of European Union framework of Convention on Climate Change, and later in 2009 with the Kyoto Protocol. And at that stage, Turkey, although Turkey was not initially classified, was not legally binding emission reduction targets, first national climate change strategy was announced, and this is one of the important milestones in the milestones that outline the country's adaptation strategy, focusing on water management, agriculture, disaster reconstruction in urban areas. And at the same time, to support these activities, the Integrated Urban Development Strategy and Action Plan was also announced and prepared. This is mainly show and provide a roadmap for central and local governments in Turkey for the urban development process. And as a briefly, we can say that the climate change adaptation process has a second phase started in the 2050s with Turkey's tangible actions in UN conventions, and as well as the emergence of the new commitments such as Sendai Framework and UN Sustainable Development Goals. And in that sense, Turkey was one of the first signing countries of the Paris Agreement, but it was not totally ratified for 5 years until UN Green Deal and European Union Green Deal and European Union New Climate Change Adaptation Strategy was announced. And in 2021, after this Green Deal and New Climate Change Strategy, Turkey changed its main perspective and decided to rectify the Paris Agreement and accepted to make its obligations as well. That's why, and after that process, Turkey announced the updated national climate change adaptation and mitigation plans, considering the targets of the and the requirements of the UN Sustainable UN Convention on Climate Change. After this, depending on this brief history, the question of how these adaptation efforts in the regulatory perspective or a policy perspective can be integrated in the spatial planning process is one of the key questions that we have to consider. And in that sense, the critical role of regulatory tools of land management and urban planning decisions comes to the forefront. And in this slide, you can see the summary of the major regulatory tools on climate change adaptation in Turkey in terms of spatial scale. And this summary clearly shows that current climate change adaptation efforts are mainly carried out at the national scale under the policy priorities of the central government. And they have recently started to implement these policies in diverse dimensions. And we can say that it is a good starting point in that sense. However, there are many uncertainties on how these national policies will lead to regional or the local scale special practices, or whether these actions can really succeed to improve the urban resilience by reaching the targets of the measures or not. Unfortunately, we don't have any idea yet. Therefore, it is very crucial and important point to conduct efficient and applicable monitoring mechanisms to follow the implementation of these studies and strategies and actions. And additionally, policy frameworks on economic sectors, spatial planning, and land management need to be updated to harmonize the climate change adaptation priorities and targets with the real spatial implementations. In the regional scale, we have some good opportunities, which are the river basin management plans and the sub plans on drought and desertification mitigation, flood mitigation, and water allocation. These plans are prepared under the European Union Water Framework Directive, and they have several analyses and outputs about the future climate models and possible impacts of climate change on hydrological systems. Therefore, they can be very useful tool to develop a regional specific priorities or targets for climate change adaptation. And unfortunately, there is a very limited regulatory actions in local scale, which is the most crucial missing point for the urban resilience and urban climate governance. Currently, local disaster mitigation plans are the most used legal basis for implementing the climate adaptation strategies in urban areas. However, these plans are mostly constituted based on the earthquake risk, but in the recent years, this priority is changed and transformed into the multi-hazard risk assessment approach after a huge floods, forest fires, and landslide events in recent years that we have in Turkey. On the other hand, local municipalities have started to prepare the local climate action plans by taking the institutional initiatives through international organizations such as European Union Conventions of Mayors or local governments for sustainability community as well. And the number of these local initiatives is increasing at last 2 years, because European Union gives some grant supports to Turkey to activate the local climate action. And this is a good opportunity for the local governments to improve their capacity building, to improve their capacity on climate change mitigation as well. And for climate change adaptation, Turkey has some institutional rearrangements as well in terms of climate resilience. And the most critical, the most important point is here, the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization, which is a primary responsible for body from spatial planning and urban development, has gained additional task and authority after the ratifying of Paris Agreement. And climate change the ministry changed its name and extended as Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. And the new directory and new officers just working on the climate change adaptation strategies was established. And this national level reorganization, institutional reorganization, also reflects to the local scale. And in 2022, there is a regulation for institutional restructuring of local municipalities. And with this regulation, each municipality has to establish its climate change office and zero waste office in order to make climate change adaptation implementations.
Do you want to be faster, Nukhet? Because your time is up.
This is my almost last slide. As I mentioned before, climate change adaptation has recently starting to take place in Turkey. And here you can see the distribution of current climate change action plans prepared by the local governments. Here in metropolitan municipalities are the pioneer actors, as you can see from the map. And lower scale governments such as small city municipalities and district municipalities do not prioritize climate action in their agenda yet, unfortunately. And additionally, we can say that some metropolitan municipalities, which are Istanbul, Izmir, Bursa, Muğla, Mersin, Adana, and Ankara, are more specialized in awareness and knowledge based, because several district municipalities in these metropolitan areas have also published and announced their climate change adaptation plans and started to implement. As a result, we can say that Turkey has a high capacity and willingness to adapt and for climate change adaptation, has completed a fast-track process in a short time, in almost 3 or 4 years. But unfortunately, it is not yet clear how the policy objectives and planning practices will be integrated in different spatial scales. And additionally, it is important to develop legal obligations to enforce the transformation of climate adaptation policies into practices. Developing integrated monitoring and evaluation mechanism for the regulations is very critical issue that have to be considered. Low awareness and lack of institutional capacity of local governments should be seen as the most serious obstacle in that sense for the efficient implementation, because unfortunately, current spatial planning and urban development process are based on traditional techniques in Turkey, where spatial decision makers are unwilling to take the responsibility of using innovative and new solutions in that sense. And it is very crucial to revise and update the planning standards and norms, especially to encourage and enforce natural-based solution or green infrastructure practices in urban planning, urban design, or master plan development. And on the other hand, Turkey has a high accessibility to obtain financial resources such as grants, fundings, or loans, etc., which is needed for climate change adaptation from European Union or other international cooperations. And actually, this is a good opportunity to improve its climate change adaptation capacity. Thank you. I'm sorry, a little bit long.
Thank you, Nuket, for your presentation. Everyone, let's move to the third panelist, Pak Angga Dwi Artama. He will speak about urban biodiversity and its role in the ecosystem services. Pak Angga, as other speaker, we hope that you can speak for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Budias. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, yes, Pak.
Yes, okay. Okay, let me share my slides first, or okay, so I only prepared 3 slides just to be really concise. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angga, and I'm gonna talk a bit about what urban biodiversity is and what its role is. More details, I would like to probably just look at biodiversity through the same perspectives. So from biology perspectives, we understand that biodiversity comes in 3 layers, right? The first one is ecosystems diversity or ecological diversity. The second layer is species diversity, and the lowest sort of layers is genetic diversity, and all of these layers are linked together. So when we talk about urban biodiversity, for instance, we're not necessarily talking only about, say, trees and animals within the city area, but also the different ecosystems that built into cities, either naturally or in terms of man-made or built environment. So the thing about biodiversity is that when we talk about biodiversity 20 years ago, in 1992 and 1993, when we talk about the conventions on biological diversity, we mostly talk about biodiversity in its natural context. When we talk about biodiversity in the rural areas, in forests, in the oceans, in the coastal areas, and how, of course, when you talk about that, biodiversity is only looked at quite narrowly, and it focuses more on how biodiversity provides resources for the communities, but also in terms of ecosystems in general. And when we talk about that as well, we talk in the Conventions of Biological Diversity in CBD in 1992, biodiversity is often linked with local knowledge, folklore, local indigenous communities, right? But then time has passes by, and now the picture on your left here is from the World Economic Forum, and they looked at biodiversity in a more complex understanding. Biodiversity governance, for instance, about ecosystem services, and you can see here all of these subtopics, all of these aspects that relate with biodiversity. We talk about environmental social governance, about sustainable developments, about values, about climate change and climate crisis, about social justice, etc. So we need to understand that biodiversity is far more complex. The concepts of biodiversity and how it links with many other issues are far more complex as it is now as it is compared to 20 years ago. And so when we talk again now about biodiversity, it's not only about protecting biodiversity for the sake of biodiversity, but to understand that biodiversity can help us in providing solutions to many other environmental issues. You've probably heard of these concepts of triple planetary crisis. The first one is biodiversity loss. The second one is, of course, climate change, and the other one is pollutions. And they are all linked together. We can see how climate change affects biodiversity, but we can also see how biodiversity provides solutions to climate change through many different aspects. So in the pictures on the right here, we can see how ecosystems-based approach, biodiversity-based approach, when it comes to restorations, to protection, infrastructure management, and issue specifics, and they face societal challenges, water, food, energy crisis, for instance, can actually provide the solutions. And we call this an NBS, nature-based solutions, to many different human issues. And this is why we need to see urban, so urban biodiversity, the biodiversity that is provided within the urban areas can be seen as a solutions to many other different problems within the urban areas, but also to the wider areas. And I totally agree with Burita in the previous sections that mentioned that you have to see urban as not only as it as a isolated area, but also linked up with the rural areas, with the wider areas, including the global scale. So I would like to refer to a paper in Nature Journal, in Urban Sustainability, so Power of Nature Journal, written by Jennifer Pierce and her colleagues. And they talk about urban nature index tools, which is used to monitor urban ecological performance. The main idea of this paper is that when we try to protect biodiversity, and in this particular case, urban biodiversity, we need to see it not for our own benefits at the local city level, but also because our city is responsible for the wider areas as well. You can see here in the picture over here, the urban biosite impact areas, where you can see that everything that we do in the city, in terms of land use, in terms of social influence, social economic processes, consumptions, productions, it impacts not only within the boundary of the city, but also the hinterland, the peri-urban, the rural areas, but also the global areas. So in this sense, we have to understand that protecting biodiversity and maintaining biodiversity in the urban areas, maintaining urban biodiversity is an obligation, it's a responsibility that the government, the city government, the city councils, that everyone in the city needs to understand. This is our responsibility to the wider communities, to the wider ecosystems. So they come up with that show how how city actions, how indicators in the city, how human pressures can be seen as indicators of urban ecological performance. And we need to see how we can improve our ecological performance, improving our biodiversity by looking at the way we consume things, the way we maintain our habitats, the way we produce pollutions, for instance, how we contribute to the environment, as well as how the environment contributes to us, our governance in the city. So I think that's probably my take on how we looked at urban biodiversity, and how it links to providing solutions to the city as well as the wider area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the fourth panelist, Ibu Dominique Plumley. The floor is yours. Please, if you may talk around 3 minutes, Ibu.
Hello, everyone. I think my microphone is on.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, I can hear you.
My head is full of all this information. It's great. It's very interesting. It's I think a lot of intersections showed up and a lot of open questions. So I'm looking forward to discussing that in future. So I will run through my presentation here shortly. I will focus on negotiated knowledge creation and distribution. And what I hope to achieve with this input is to clarify fundamental differences between academic approaches and working with and through art in social cultural settings. So I think to position it more clearly, it's what Rita has been saying before in the first panel. The work of communities, the communities do work, they do act and try to co-create livable futures, and artists play an important role in there. And there's a lot of misunderstanding between academics and artists about one's procedures. So actually, I would like to focus on that and hope to contribute to clarify this. So I bring to the discussion experience in both areas. As an artist, I engage in collaborative settings, while my research focuses on working with art, working with and through art in social culture contexts. So I do a lot of methodological and meta-theoretical reflection. And my background is in philosophy and with a PhD in global and area studies. What I'm sharing here is largely informed by knowledge gained through participation, especially also in Jatiwangi Art Factory activities, and by analyses from the CHAF co-founder Gingi, who is also part of the steering committee of this webinar. So moving within both academic and art professional circles, I hear complaints from each side about the other. So academics tend to see artists as mere service providers, tasked with delivering and acting and visualizing their visions and goals to the public. And this is, of course, a much too narrow understanding of what artists do when working with and through art in social cultural settings to co-create livable futures. On the other hand, artists are often critical of the time academics spend on disciplinary rigor. They tend to argue that too little time is spent on truly experiencing the plays and gaining in-depth, multisensory understandings of what the complex dynamics, what kind of complex dynamics are present in specific settings. So I actually prepared for a 10-minute presentation. So obviously this is too much what I've got here, the contextualization, professional academic ways of working, transformative approaches, social art movements and outlook. So I'm summarizing this a bit, hopefully within the 3 minutes. So contextualization.
Ibu Dominic, sorry, is your slide moving or it's still in the first page?
Because it's still show
On my computer it is. Yeah, so what do I do, Reza?
Stop first.
Okay, I stop and reload.
And reload. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know. No, I saw the new one. So okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So contextual remarks might be 2 points. Various knowledge. Let's say, beginning of the 20th century, academic knowledge has been seen as the knowledge that then is shared to the public. Starting in the mid of 20th century, this has become more and more obsolete. I mean, we know research and development issues, more and more philosophers and sociologists of science have started to talk about diverse knowledge formation systems. So, for example, quite popular also in the discussion in art and in professional or practitioner research is reflection in the action, and of course, reflecting on reflection in the action. So, as we have faster and faster cycles of development and challenges, it's too slow to wait till university have solutions for something. So we as professionals in the field, we continuously solve problems. And in terms of modes of knowledge, so disciplinary knowledge then has also been complemented by transdisciplinary knowledge, dispositional, transdisciplinary knowledge, and critical knowledge. So the dispositional knowledge, I'm having here sort of all the speakers always in my text, the dispositional and transdisciplinary knowledge, that's under this title, what they're discussing the professional practice-based knowledge, which is directed towards solving practical problems in everyday working environments. So this is a completely different perspective than if you come with one particular topic, a set of methods, a limited scope of what you look at from an academic setting into reality, and then you try to find data, you're trying to find more about that one particular snapshot of reality. Whereas artists working in community settings, they are in a work environment. A lot of different levels are layering each other. They have to take a holistic approach. And just a second. And the art collectives that I'm especially interested in are the ones who are discussed under social art movements, transformative, who apply transformative approaches. This means that these movements, they are acknowledging that our world is a pluriverse. This means that we have a lot of different understandings what it means to be in the world, and that our future should lie in environments where everyone fits, all these different understandings of life can coexist, where art is not determined through some universal concept, but always has local art rootings. The same even applies for methodologies and methods, and where one takes a holistic approach to find solutions together with everyone within the community. So best practices, and this might be very astonishing for people working mainly in the academics, best practices always involves wide grounds, working with impermanence, allowing for vulnerability, having rolling and gradual development cycles, and the continuous adjustment of both. So if one really wants to work with art collectives and integrate the potential and opportunity that working with artists provides, one has to find intersections where academics and the art collectives can establish a shared space where it's possible for the art collectives still working, what actually allows them to come up with best results. I think the main idea, I got it across. So I'll hand back to you. Budiati, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominique, for the presentations. It's a very interesting one. So let's move to discussing the four presentations from the four panelists. We will have Judith Dietrich and also Pak Doni to share with us what are the common threads from the materials presented by the panelists, and what can we learn from these practices and experiences in order for us to adapt to climate change and increase urban resilience. Judith, your time is around 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for your invitation and for all the fascinating communication and experiences presented here. In fact, I didn't prepare any slides, so I will just have to some reflection about the presentation that have been presented here for this second panel. And your presentation here proved that researchers has made enormous strides in terms of practices, of methods, and the way it examines the production of knowledge. And of course, we would like to know more about this wonderful situation, to know more about all this opportunity presented through this webinar. and to discover more about all these initiatives. I just would like to put some common threads, and the first one is to see the presentation are really useful to present concrete situations, but also they show how much it's difficult to change scale. The question of scale, I think, is really important because we have some focus on concrete situations, but it's hard to change scale to see how it could be possible in the global scale. So what I was thinking is how can we pass from pilot projects, local projects, and how can we generalize it on practice and policies? And in fact, Nuket shows the difficulty is to articulate these skills. This was the first point. The second one is how much it's important to see that ordinary people has to be considered as real actors, real stakeholders, which is not really taken charge by urban policies. And this is, for me, something that it's kind of a question of justice, that we have to recognize the specificity of communities and their involvement in the decision about the future. So that's why it was useful to question resilience through the justice question, because it's not only a question of redistribution and equality of access to goods, but also a question of recognition of other models, other practices, other uses to make really resilience possible. And the last point was something I was asking myself about the question of representation. Today is gray, today is dark, today is polluted, and the pictures of future are green and beautiful and wonderful. Even we say that the future will be catastrophic. And sometimes I ask myself if we can see the future as beautiful sometimes, but in fact the reality is more difficult. And asking to people to be resilient, even the emergency of daily life, of the uncertainty of also of their life, is really difficult to articulate today questions, today issues, and future issues. But in the same time, thank you to Dominique to say to us that we need to put some dreams and to some poetry to renew our practices and to invent other ways and other way to do research, but also other way to do policies, urban policies, to include resilience, but in the art of the policies, but not just to discover, to make urban policy beautiful. So that was all the things that the presentation say to me this morning, this afternoon for you in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, for discussing them. And next one, Pak Doni, do you mind sharing your thoughts and reflections from those four presentation from the four panelists? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Budiati. So you can hear me?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Pak.
Yeah. Actually, I want to share one or two slides because I have a similar experience with the Darrens actually, and I have a project in Makassar right now, funding from US and another country, And I would like to see that Nuket already saw about how actually a government have involved to the community, and Dominic and share about how actually the how to connect the academicians to the reality. This is very, very, very important. So this is my sharings, my presentation sharing that I present to the government of Makassar. So actually, what is actually the community resilience? So we have some aspects of the community resilience that already mentioned with the Nukets, and Dietrich already mentioned about this one as well, and maybe Angga already mentioned about variables or three can have to pay attention is what kind of the vulnerable important that we have to learn the communities in the local context, not learned by the governments, but we have to learn by ourselves what actually the community needs because of the vulnerability. Because all the vulnerability is have same. It's not the same difficulty to facing the disasters in the local context. And another one is about the hazard. So the hazard is have some connection with the naturals and the built and the financial. So it is very important how we build the natural and the built environments, and how actually the financials have to build in this context. And Nuket mentions is about the uncertainty. This is what about the vulnerability and hazard get the uncertainty. How actually the governments facing the uncertainty about how to manage financially, how to facing the vulnerability in the local context, because climate change is very broad. You know, it's not just about the sea level rise, but it is about the food. It is about the energy usings. It is about the waters. It is about the quality of the health. So many things. So what kind of the community that have to face things directly, and we know what the community needs actually. And we have to talk upon the asset. Yeah, there is a three indicator that we have to mention about this one. But Angga already mentioned about the asset of the naturals, about the urban index, natural index. That's our asset. But the asset is not from the tangibles, but there is asset in the intangibles. There is a social aspect, there is economic aspect, there is a cultural aspect, and human itself assets. So how we build the adaptive capacity. This is what I want to build about this discussion. How actually community adapt for the future, for the resilience, and how the equity to build in the future. So this means is about the community resilience, how we build the capacity of adaptiveness of the community, and how about the equity and that local community. Another ones, this is my theory. Actually, in the high levels is about the sustainability. How actually the urban form in the context of urban. So we know that the sustainability is upon the economic, environmental, and the social. So we have to fare which ones if the community needs, because we have to control on the environment, the social, the economic. When we control the economic and environment, and the communities become visible, And when we control the economic and the socials, so the community is fair. I mean, the diversity is very important in the community. So that's Angga already mentioned about the natural. The natural is the biodiversity is not just about the peoples, not about the community, but about the ecologicals, about the species, about the genetic, how we maintain at the biodiversity. That's the fairness. And when we maintain the environments to the socials, that's we call about the livability of the urbans. And the borders of this theory is the how actually the government controls the resources used, the emissions, the health, and how the diversity controlled by the governments. So the government, when they can control, they can make the vitality of the resource and the emission of the health, and they fit to the community. This is very important. How actually all the resources at the community fit to them, not fit to other community. Every government just get the theory from other country that bring to that community one. So the resilience is not just about 1 year. Maybe the resilience could be more than 10 years. So how the persistence of the governments and the community maintains by the stakeholders all in the local context. And this is the end of my presentation. It's about how actually the building designs and the master plannings and the transportations, if we talk about the emissions and energy, and there is a community system plannings. That's the community system plannings. So the academic has to go to the reality. That's what Lemley already mentioned about this one. So actually the academic is not just the theory, but they have to learn from the community in the local context, and brings that thought from the community to the academic area. So it is very important, vice versa, from the academics and to the reality, and from the reality to the academic. So we can learn and how to build the knowledge of the community resilience. Thank you, Bu Budi.
Thank you, Pak Doni, for your reflections. So, everyone, I would like, now it's a session for question and answer. And I would like to pose questions to the panelists. And my first questions goes to Darren. Darren, you had interesting presentations about food waste challenge in Hong Kong. So from your experience, how long does it take for the community to address their issues in terms of food waste, and what do you think that it needs for these communities to sustain their efforts?
Okay. Right. So for the government have already addressed the issues. Like everyone have to do their own food waste sorting at home and then donate to the smart bin that collect those things to the fertilizer, to the waste to energy plant. But the involvement, the social participation is really low. So the government just blame those people. You do not have that sense of responsibility and duty. So, but for the community itself, there are lots of constraint, particularly the public hygiene concept. The notion in Hong Kong is really weird. Like they don't, on the street or in the wet market, even in restaurant, the government will send officer to check if you do not dispose your food waste immediately, and then you will be like charge. So that's why collecting food waste or waste food as edible food or compost is quite hard. So, but at the same time, the people live there, for example, in a community near the university, they got funded by some like family foundation. Weird, right? So they got funded by them, and then those aunties, those housewives, they do not do volunteer work. They got paid by the NGO. So because they live there, they have the local connection with those restaurant owners and sellers in West Market. So they will organize a time they can place their food waste on the lane or on the street, and then they will collect it immediately to avoid the monitor of the government, particularly from the hygiene or sanitation department. So that is just like a game now. So at the same time, the government want the community to work more. On the other hand, the community member actually they have their own way to deal with this issue, because the whole planning of urban hygiene in Hong Kong actually like drain away those grassroots actions to that. So I do not have much like suggestions, but seeing those lively strategy on the ground is amazing, and also it's hard to upscale, because every district or suburb have their own like formation of the community members.
Thank you,
That's it.
Darren. Okay. Nuket, my next question goes to you. You mentioned in your presentations that there are some cities that have their own local climate change plan, and there are also those that hasn't have ones. And what do you think is a good strategy to encourage those that who hasn't have their own local climate change plan to have developed one?
Yes, I think it is a good strategy, because every city and every metropolitan area has a quite knowledge about its dynamics. That's why, in order to make a efficient climate adaptation, actually, we have to really understand the spatial dynamics, and we have to develop solutions to manage or to solve the problems in that sense. That's why, additionally, if you want to really implement the climate change adaptation strategies on the ground, the master plans or the urban development plans are very critical, because these plans are shaping or generating the urban forms, today's urban forms and futures urban forms. That's why they define how we use the land, how we organize the land uses, or how we shape our cities in the actual life. That's why each district or each local authorities have to get knowledge about the site-specific risk or potentials related to the climate change adaptation, and they have to be implemented these strategies by producing or developing tangible practices or projects on the ground. And I think in this way we can succeed, or we can make some real applications for the climate change adaptations. That's why I think it is very important, and I hope in the coming future, these strategies can be efficiently integrated into special plans, especially in the lower scale. Right. That's my idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuket, for explaining your strategy and ideas. And next is to Pak Angga. Pak Angga, you talk about urban biodiversity, which is interesting. And what do you think that a city administration, for example, I think ITB is in Bandung, Bandung City, how Bandung City administration can do to improve its urban biodiversity? And what do you think is the benefit to have this urban biodiversity?
Right. Thank you, Budias. I think I start with the second question, which is, I guess, easier to answer. I mean, urban biodiversity, of course, has a lot of roles. We can talk about ecosystem services, direct benefits, say, for instance, as food, as source of resources, but also in terms of ecosystem services like water, mitigating or sequestering carbons, for instance, those sort of things. I guess what I want to highlight here is that the benefits of maintaining biodiversity is not only limited to the city itself, and sometimes the one that gets the benefit is probably not the city but the inter areas, and so we need to be less egotistical, to only see biodiversity as something that we can use to gain our benefits, but also because it's our responsibility to maintain biodiversity. And so it leads to the first question, which is how the city administrations needs to maintain biodiversity. I mean, we talk about urban green space, for instance, as one of the key factors. I guess what's also important is maintaining islands of natural ecosystems. I know that it's difficult to maintain natural environment in the city, but it's something that we need to understand. It's really important to understand those kind of things, and also linking up, building networks of ecosystems. And I think by building these networks, we open this smaller isolated ecosystems into larger, wider regions, and that will definitely bring larger benefits to our society. And so I think what the government needs to do is firstly committing to that maintaining the green space, and also to understand how nature works. I think that's when we talk about a lot about policies, but it's all rhetoric if we don't really understand how nature works. If we know how nature works, if we understand, like for instance in Jakarta, it's always, I mean, it floods every time because it's actually wetlands, right? So if we understand that basic ideas of how ecosystem works, we can better see that. I think that's probably sort of like a more abstract solution, but I think that's what I can probably say. Thank
you. Thank you, Pangga. Ibu Dominic, yeah, you have a very philosophical presentations in your talk. So I think that your last point on your presentations is about the outlook, Bu. So what do you think is the outlook of this knowledge creation and distribution in the future, if we are talking about urban context and urban resilience? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Bu Widiati. So actually, these artists working with art in social cultural settings, they are embedded in the community, so they're part of the communities. So when we talk about let's look what communities do, that's where we should look. And they have an immense expertise in how to organize in long-term perspectives that things happen. But but they're also facing a lot of difficulties. It's Gingi said, we had a chat before this webinar here now, and he said, of course you need agents, of course you have to imagine, you have to reframe, we have to bring people together, but in the most challenging aspect actually of artists being embedded in communal settings and working there is also how to keep your energy high, because they are following transformative perspectives. So transformative is different to, for example, reformist or revolutionary approaches. Revolutionary approaches, that means you want to take power, you want to seize power. Reformist approaches means you want, within the given setting, you want to change certain things. But the transformative approaches, they really look for structural change, as many of my co-presenters have also been pointing out. So what the artists are actually doing is, as professionals with practical actions and jointly with community members, developing long-time strategies. And so they have to take shape because it's transformative. No, we don't know how to do it. There's not a recipe how to do it. So transformative actually means trial and error, bringing people together and move forward together. And so I think the outlook for me, the ideal outlook is if also from the academic side, it's not just, what do these crazy artists do? And it's not precise methodology and I don't understand it. Maybe we can just take it and say, okay, they know what they do because it's their profession. And the academics know what they are doing. What we need is actually also there a horizontal exchange and discussion of where can we meet and how can we support each other. I think with that, I close. Thank you.
I think that's a very important point that you mentioned, Ibu Dominique. So everyone, so this is the final part of the panel too, and the time I think it's already more than it was scheduled. So I would like to thank the panelists and also the discussion for interesting topic about practices and experiences on urban resilience on climate change. With this, I would like to return the session to Rere. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you to all of the speakers, Mr. Liu, Ibu Nuke, Pak Angga, Ibu Dominique, Mrs. Yudi, Pak Doni, and Ibu Dias for sharing their valuable experiences and insights. We have covered a lot of ground today, exploring both the challenges and potential solutions for building climate resilient cities. Now, to bring together the key themes and insights from both panels, we move into a roundtable discussion. This concluding segment will be led by Ibu Ramalis Sobandi and Mr. Kun De Wanderer. Ibu Ramalis is the founder of Tunas Nusa Foundation, formerly worked as public official, focusing on housing, settlement, and urban development at the Ministry of Public Works. Currently, she facilitates collaboration among various stakeholders in the development process, supported by Pro Bono Young Professional Team. And Dr. Kun De Wanderer is a lecturer and researcher of KU Leuven Faculty of Architecture. His current research interests focus on urban transition process, temporality, and systems thinking. Given his extensive work experience in urban issues in the Global South, he remains actively involved in various action research and consultancy networks. They will offer their perspectives on the discussion so far and guide us towards actionable steps for the future. Let's hear from Ibu Ramalis and Mr. Kun De Wanderer as they lead us in this important concluding conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Rere. Dr. Kun, are you there?
I am, definitely.
Okay. As we already prepare the draft conclusion, for me myself, it is very interesting listening to all thought from all around the world. First of all, I would like to thank to all panelists, keynote speaker, and moderator and discussion that eagerly accomplish my request to take part of this webinar. For me, this is the first conclusion that we have friends everywhere. There's a very blessed situation, yeah. Okay. From you side, Mr. Kun, Dr. Kun, is there anything as a preliminary?
Well, first of all, I also want to thank you to invite me to this webinar. I happen to be in the neighborhood, and I appreciate your invitation. but I also appreciate Bandung. As weird as it may sound for some of you, the striking feature in when I arrived here yesterday is how green the city is. And so I very much appreciate the input by Angga, who was advising the municipal services to or councils to keep the green as it is. Very much important as well. And of course, I didn't have time to examine this, is what he also emphasized, to keep those islands of biodiversity. I just pick up what my first impressions of the city with what he said. In very general terms, in all the diversity that we've been, bio and other, that we've been experiencing throughout the last 3 hours, one aspect that strikes me is of course, the emphasis that is put on local knowledge. And the difficulty to merge local knowledge with other levels of knowledge, whether it's provincial, national, or global. There's obviously very often a mismatch, and very often the local knowledge is ignored or misinterpreted or not appreciated as enough. And the striking thing is that throughout the 2 panels, so not only in the second panel where we were talking about past experiences, but also in the first panel, several ways of revaluing that local knowledge have been brought forward. I think it's very encouraging, but I leave it at that for the moment being.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you share the slide, Tasha, and directly to the slide 7? Because for me, the conclusion is very important in terms of we will not stop until this webinar. I think everyone here agree that we have to do something. The first things that this webinar can contribute to better future is that we start making an informal global network. Yes, Tunas Nusa is working together with the Environmental Office region of West Java. Yes, that's one of the reasons that the second point is what should the province of West Java do to improve their urban resilience. But the first of all is that let's nurture our global network for urban resilience on climate change. First of all, we should start our database experience, local experience, and try to amplify it with more and trying to scaling up to bigger issues, more pressing issues, yeah. So our existence is meaningful. That's in my opinion. I don't know if you agree or no, Pak Kun.
Yes, definitely.
Agree, yeah? Okay. And
Absolutely.
then the second, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Okay.
Go on, please.
And then the second thing for me is very interesting today discussion because many person from many different perspectives and experiences in different areas share their thought. For me, expert exchange is also important. So hopefully somebody will invite me. Dominic will invite Pak Kun, for example, and other Ibu Rita will invite somebody else. So let's what they call scaling up our collaboration, scaling up the way we discuss, the way we support each other in real action in the field. That's in my opinion. Do you want to add more, Pak Kun, for this nurturing global network?
Well, I think the missing, of course, the missing link here is exactly the people on the ground. So we're here. We are all academics and artists. Sorry, Dominic, and artists more or less, or academic artists or artistic academics. But we, most of us, and I can speak for myself for sure, we still live in an ivory tower, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So networking is a very important aspect of it, and going back and forth without, hopefully without putting too much of an ecological footprint, going back and forth is important as well. The importance is also to have the field experience. And since we are all in education or in educational systems, it is very important not only to keep this networking amongst ourselves, established academics, but also to involve students in this kind of exposure from very early onwards. Not only the exposure to other academics, but also to the field, what we call the field. Yes, I think it's very, very important. Yes.
Okay, so after the exchanging local voices, access to the real feeling for future expert. Okay. Access to real feeling for the future expert. For the future expert.
Yeah.
Okay. Field. Okay. The second point is the West Java Province Urban Resilience Assessment. This is the program that I got from Ibu Yuli. Ibu Yuli, are you here or you already left? So I think this is a message. Do you want to add something or to explain what really are this policy of West Java, Ibu Yuli? So, as you know, the West Java province is the biggest in Indonesia, and deterioration of the environment is very, very, very pressing. So, this is the 3 points that Ibu Yuli put in our future path. So, feel free if some of you, the audiences, have any connection with West Java or have any connection with these activities. And then the third point is actually the thing that a lot discussed in the panel too. So collaboration among stakeholders, integrating approaches like we are doing now, scaling up local experience into an ecosystem important. So it is incorporating several speakers with Pak Angga way of thinking and thought, and then the developing different level of strategies, local to global, present to long term, this from Dominic, I think, and horizontal and vertical discussion is from Mbak Dias Budiati. Yeah? Anything from you, Pak Kun, for the third point,
I
knowledge
think it's very
production?
complete. It is very complete as it is, indeed.
Okay. Last but not least, how can we reach bigger audience? What we have in mind in this future path is that we are using the social media especially. That's we are doing since 5 months ago, reach out potential audience, which is very, very hard. And then enhance priority substance, yeah. Because we know there's a lot of to do, but we know that we have limited capacity. So I think all of us have to trying in each our institution to reach out more to enhance priorities of substance. What do you think, Pak Kun?
Well, one possibly again because I've been working a lot on health issues lately. It is one aspect that was central in your presentation, definitely, because the health, where urbanization and climate change reinforce each other, poses threats to our health. And I'm speaking about health in the most general terms. The health is basically about human well-being. And that's not only the physical aspects, but also more and more the mental aspects. And again, I'm coming back to education and raising children or young people to maintain the sanity of mind amongst all the craziness that is surrounding us and attacking us every day is very important. It not only the access to health, it's also to have healthy attitudes towards life, towards community, towards government also, and towards each other, obviously, including hope. Very important. Yes.
Yes, I agree, Pak Kun, what you say, because what we experiencing in 4 years, they didn't know anything. So not the health access, but the information on health is also inaccessible for them. Because they don't understand the language. Not the language Indonesia, English. No. The language of health system is very, very ununderstanding for them. So I think the thing that you mentioned is so important. So to conclude our conclusion, is there anything what you want to final remarks from you?
Yes, I think also in the last bit in the second panel, it became very, very obvious that oh yes, the structural we have a structural problem. Rita, exactly. We have a structural problem, and the structural problem is doing us in. It's on the verge of killing us. So I think the structural problem is basically a return to nature. Nature to the fore. Not only in design, but also in the whole way that we approach resilience.
Okay, Pak Kun, yes, Ibu Rita presentation give us a very deep thought, yeah. Do we have to do more? Do we have the capacity to influence the structure? How can we do if you want to do? That's the thing that come to my mind. My final remarks is a request to you all that theoretically they say, well, the clever, the important person say that there are three pathways to become resilient. First is persistence, second is transition, and third is transformation. So to conclude my own understanding of this afternoon dialogue is that let's put ourselves thinking more on what can we do together to support each other on preparing the urban resiliency to combat with the climate change with three pathways in each our own ecosystem. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pak Kun, for your contribution. Let's work together because we have a plan to work together with Pak Doni and Bu Alice and Ibu Pak Roni and Ibu Karo, yeah, for the next semester. Hopefully, we can nurture the young expert to become better than us, yeah.
Yeah, we
Thank you
try.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back to you, Mbak Resya.
Thank you, Ibu Ramalis and Pak Kun. We have had a truly enriching experience thanks to the insightful contributions to our keynote speakers, panelists, and of course, all of you, our engaged participants. Before we conclude, let's capture this moment. We have love for everyone to turn on their cameras so we can take group photo. Please smile and give wave. Smile and give wave. All can please open your cameras. All. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our international webinar on climate change and urban resilience. We hope you found it informative, inspiring, and a catalyst for future collaboration. Recording of this webinar are available on Tunas Nusa Foundation YouTube channel. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.